Okay, so the horizon, as we can see just here, clearly this one here is in an inferior mirage, something that we've been told for a long time represented the curve of the Earth. We see the land in the distance there. We can only see parts of the land. We can't see the whole thing. And this isn't really what the presentation is on. I'm just chucking this in here, but here's the horizon is basically, it's a, what's the word for it? It's a dynamic thing, right? So here, as we'll watch what was the horizon move as the inferior mirage starts to melt away, right? So the horizon isn't something that's always in a static position. It's constantly moving. It's never in the same spot. And rarely, for me personally, very rarely have I ever seen it in the exact position of where the globe would say it should be. But I would always say that even a broken clock is right twice a day. So it's always going to be crossing. So it's always moving from closer to you to further away from you. And it's obviously going to always cross somewhere in between where the globe says it should be, in between that. Right, so as you see there, we can see the horizon just moving. And unfortunately, this day didn't. If this day had got a couple of degrees warmer, centigrade, we would have seen that horizon move all the way down to that land at the back there. So I do have other footage that shows that. And we see like little boats just appearing. Now, are they appearing from over a curve? This is the thing, isn't it? So I'm going to say the word perspective a lot. So it's a trigger warning to anyone who really does get triggered by that kind of thing, and they don't really understand exactly what we mean by perspective or what I'll be meaning by perspective, but we'll be going over that. I always give props to the people that came before me, some of these great observation channels. If you guys don't know them, and I'm sure that you do know, some of you would know most of them, but not all of them. So I always give props to these guys because they got great channels. Phuket Word's done some amazing things on perspective. So he has some great videos on that. He has many, many good videos on perspective. But I'll be showing you perspective in a way that's never been really described or seen before. Okay, so the horizon. Hold on a second. I just need to do this. So the horizon, yeah, according to the globe, or according to Google, sorry, what it is, why is it there, and where is it? Well, these two here just have to do with purely to do with the globe. So I'm just going to get rid of those. And the other one, I'll just read that quickly. The horizon is the apparent line at which the sky and earth or sea meet. In drawing, the horizon line is a crucial element in perspective. It represents the viewer's eye level. Notice how it's always going to be told that it represents your eye level, and is essential for creating the illusion of depth and space in a 2D image. Now, when it comes to perspective, it's not just essential for creating depth in a 2D image. Perspective is literally the way we see the world. If we didn't see the world in perspective, we'd be walking into walls. We wouldn't know what's higher than something else. Like this is just, it's exactly how we see. Everything that we see in perspective. There's nothing that we see that we do not see in perspective. I'm not going to continue reading that. We'll go into some other things. So this is what they say is really going on. Here's our horizon. We're looking down like this, but that's not what's going on. So if it's not that, then what is it? And what gets me about this, and what's up with this meme? Because that's not how we see. When we see and we look out dead in front of us, we see this visual ramp. Now we know it's not a real ramp. We know that the horizon actually isn't coming up with us. It's all visual, but that's how we see the world. We don't see the world the way that they're showing it here in this meme. Okay, so the horizon. This is the horizon line or eye level. This is how it's always been described. Okay, it's never not been described as the horizon being at your eye level, which is why we've always said that the horizon is at your eye level. So it says here, it doesn't matter if you are peering up or down, the horizon line remains the same. It is flat like still water and is at your eye level. If you move your body up and down, then the horizon line, your eye level, moves up and down, which is what we see. As you rise up, the horizon appears to rise with you. As you lower yourself down, the horizon appears to lower. Okay, but so what am I putting forward? This is going to be something that we're going to go over, and you will see all the evidence for this. So I'm calling the horizon is the dividing line of perspective. The horizon is the furthest visual point where you can see the surface. It is the furthest visual boundary where the sky appears to meet the ground or water, and all visual paths converge to a vanishing point. But that's not all of it. It is where perspective convergence ends and perspective divergence begins. And we actually see that divergence. It's not an arbitrary thing. But you yourself, you also are a dividing line of perspective. And we'll go over that. And it's basically just that from your feet to your eye level, everything will go up from that point, no matter 360 degrees around you. And from your head, from where your eyes are, everything above that point, your head will come down in a 360-degree circle around you. And we'll go over that. That's not really controversial, but it's not a new thing that I'm showing, but it's just a good thing that people should actually see how that works. Right. So here is where we're going to need a little bit of interaction. So when things are moving away from the horizon, we see them disappear from the bottom up. And as they move back towards the horizon, we see them appear from the top down. So if we're just going to use purely description, no biases, we're not talking about whether it's a globe or whether it's flat. If we just use purely descripting, like if we just purely describe the phenomenon of what we see, we could say that as the ship moves away from the horizon, we see it start to disappear from the bottom first. As it moves further away from the horizon, it will keep disappearing from the bottom up. Once it moves far enough away from the horizon, it now appears to have dropped below the horizon and would be completely out of sight. So anyone who is on the side of the globe, do you agree with this statement?
Absolutely.
Right. So the whole point to it is that as something moves away from the horizon, it will appear to drop below the horizon. Okay. And then we have the exact opposite. As something moves towards the horizon, so as the ship moves towards the horizon, we see it appear from the top first, because it's just the opposite, right? It's exactly the opposite thing. As it moves closer to the horizon, we see it appear to rise up or rise onto the horizon until it reaches the horizon and becomes fully visible, because the horizon is now the furthest visual point that you can see the surface. So you agree with this statement? As it moves closer to the horizon, we will see it appear to rise up. No interaction? Okay. Well, I'm gathering that you agree with the statement because you agreed with the last one. So we're just talking the exact opposite thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. So this is where this is the crux of the actual issue. This is the crux of what's going on here. We need to just understand that what's going on is that as something moves away from the horizon, we see it appear to drop below the horizon. And as it moves towards the horizon, we see it appear to rise up as it moves towards the horizon. Okay. This shouldn't be controversial. This is what we all see. Now I'm going to show you. So here are some examples of, we have neither of these boats are moving. They're both stationary. Okay. So on the left-hand side, I am going to move myself from a low point to a high point. And what
Oh,
that's going
your
to do is
screen ain't showing plain reality. You still have your Discord just.
No, we're seeing it. I'm not sure. We're seeing it.
Oh, then
Is it
mine
lag?
is stuck.
Yeah, hers might be
maybe
stuck.
yours is lagging. Yeah. Good to keep going.
Oh, I know. Got it now.
Oh, yeah, awesome. Excuse me, sorry. Okay, so on the left-hand side, I'm going to be moving myself from a low point. I was about 1 foot off of the surface to a high point, and I think my high point in this particular image was probably about 40 feet. And on the right hand side, I'm going to go from high and then drop down to low, and I'll be approximately the same kind of height, right? So as we move, what this is doing is this is bringing the horizon closer to both of these things. So as I move up, it's going to extend the horizon on the left, and as I move down, it's going to bring the horizon closer to me on the right. And what we will see is that each of these objects will rise up, because as the horizon moves closer to anything, no matter what it is, we're going to see it appear to rise up. Right? So by changing heights, we can produce the same results for what happens when ships, boats, whatever it is, it can be land, mountains, buildings, doesn't really matter. As anything moves towards the horizon, or this happens to the ships or boats on either side of the horizon, moving towards the horizon, or the horizon moving towards them, whichever way you want to do it. So by rising up and down, you personally are moving the horizon further or closer to or from you, or if those objects are actually moving towards or away from the horizon. So the effect is exactly the same thing on either side of the horizon. As any object moves closer to the horizon, no matter which side it's on, it will appear to rise up onto the horizon. Now, we 100% know that the effect that we witness on our side of the horizon is perspective. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to prove to you that it's just perspective on both sides. Now here we have where I am just going to go from high to low, and we're going to watch the same observation. Okay. And what we get is the exact opposite. We get this teeter-tottering. All right. So as you go from high to low, you're moving the horizon closer on the right-hand side, and I'm bringing the horizon closer to me in both instances. So as it comes closer to me, the one on the left is going to appear to drop below it, and the one on the right is going to appear to rise. Now, if we just don't have the boats there at all we're seeing is this teeter-tottering, right? It's the exact same effect. We're not seeing anything different between these two things. Now, this is by no means all the evidence that I'm about to show you. As I said, this is probably going to be a good couple of hours. Now, from here, what do we see? I'm just going to have to escape out of here for a minute. So what I can do is blow this up so you can see this. Right. So you can see here where my mouse is. You guys can see all that? I'm sure you can. And we see this little part of the sail here, same as this part of the sail here. And we see how this is just poking up over the horizon. And we have this one just poking up over the horizon. All of this appears to be below the horizon. So as we move closer to the horizon, because remember how we described it, that when anything moves closer to the horizon, we will see it appear to rise up above the horizon until it reaches the horizon, which is now the furthest visual point that you can see the surface of the ground or water. And once it reaches that point and it continues to move, now both of these are moving away from the horizon, and what we will see is them drop. And you will see that on both sides of the horizon. This is not exclusive to just what happens on the opposite side of the horizon. So this is what I'm going to show you today, is that basically what's happened is we've been gaslit into just looking beyond the horizon, because that's what everyone's been concentrated on. What's happening back here? Why does this disappear when it goes beyond the horizon? But what we actually needed to be doing was looking in front of the horizon, because the exact same effect happens in front of the horizon as what happens behind the horizon or beyond the horizon. We get this exact same thing. As something moves closer to the horizon, it will appear to rise up. And as it moves away from the horizon, it will appear to drop. This is why we needed to establish that It has nothing to do with the globe. On pure description, on what we see and how we see it, what we are seeing is that when anything moves away from the horizon, it will appear to drop below the horizon. And when it moves towards the horizon, it will appear to rise up onto the horizon. Now, just so I know you guys can all tell that obviously this is our technical horizon line, and all of this is appearing to be below the horizon. But we know that it's not actually below this horizon. This is all visual. Okay, this is all just an optical effect of perspective and this apparent ramp that we get due to perspective. This apparent ramp here is also happening on this other side of the horizon. These are the same thing. Now, if we, just a couple of little basic animations, I should have left it this way so I can show this and explain this. Right, so we have this boat here, and I've put this little tower here so that way you guys can see that this boat here and this boat here are the same boat. This is the same thing, right? On this side here, this one here and this one here are the same thing. Now, this doesn't work as good in here as what it does on my PC. I had to go on my laptop because for some reason my PC doesn't share screen on Discord. Okay, so here we have, I've put two circles around these two people. This is their 360-degree vision, representing their 360-degree vision to the horizon, right? Because we will see in a 360-degree circle. So let's just say the horizon is 4 miles away, just as an example. Generally, and not always, there are exceptions to this rule, but generally we can just say that we will have a 4-mile radius circle around us. So each of these people are seeing 4 miles. Now, the girl here, who I've named Surfy, she is looking across, and that is what she is seeing. She is seeing that boat on the other side, and we can see how I've just put that little kind of jetty representing that she's seeing the boat on the other side, and then he's looking and he is seeing that ship on that side. We see how on both of them, the top of the sail is just poking up there. So everyone's following along with this animation so far?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Cool. I just don't want anyone to be confused because this is going to show like how now what they're seeing is this. Each person is actually looking. So the person on the right-hand side is watching that boat on their side move up as it moves towards the horizon, visually move up, not physically move up, but visually move up. And that boat that he's looking at on the opposite side of the horizon, he's seeing that visually move up, just as she is seeing her own boat visually move up. Okay, so we're following along here. I just want to make sure because I know this could be a little bit kind of weird and confusing.
No, it's not. It's absolutely not. Just continue, please.
Okay, no worries. All right. I just want to make sure because I know there's 4 boats there. I don't want anyone to be confused. So when they all reach the horizon, now they will start to drop back down and the boat. So now she is looking at the boat that was on his side that had come to her. It's now on her side of the horizon coming down, and they are both seeing the same thing. So if we do it like this, imagine now they're both actually looking at what's happening on the right-hand side. On that right-hand side image, they're both looking at the back of their boat, the back of their ship. And as their ship moves away and the other one gets closer, this is what they're seeing. They're both seeing the exact same thing. It's perspective happening on both sides of the horizon. Now, as it comes back down towards them, they're just seeing it come towards them. They're both seeing perspective. Now, this is an observation that the Plain Truth did. So everyone was cool with that little part that I just showed before. This is moving towards the horizon. This is moving away from the horizon. This is why we needed to establish the fact that as something moves towards the horizon, it will appear to rise up onto the horizon. And as it moves away from the horizon, it will appear to drop.
Brilliant.
And it has nothing to do with curvature. It is purely perspective. Everything that's happening beyond the horizon, now we can go that's perspective through refraction. Okay? Because that's what we're seeing beyond the horizon. Okay? And the refraction effect really starts to take, depending on obviously your height above the surface, refraction is really starting to take major effect. Maybe when you're getting like half a mile, 4 miles, depending on how high you are. Because if you're looking into, let's just say I'm generally around 20 feet above sea level, the closest that I've seen my horizon is probably around 2.5 miles. Okay, because I have a buoy, which I'll show you. That buoy is 3.5 miles away or just over. And I have had the horizon like well in front of that before. And that's normally during an inferior mirage. So that's when we're starting to get all these funky refractive effects starting to happen. Okay, so they can be happening at that point. Now, if I have a horizon that is now more like 15 miles away, that's all that funky refraction stuff can still happen from around that 3 mile mark. I can have like superior miraging of the water going on there. You'll see boats at that 3.5 mile mark, like, traveling through superior mirages. You can have all that sort of stuff going, but it's normally in the distance is where the refraction really starts to kick off. But this perspective thing happens from moment one. This happens from below your feet. The instant something starts moving away from you, it starts appearing to rise up. So here we have this observation that Travis did. Now, this is the same boat that we're looking at here, right? So this boat here is what Travis could see when he was filming from his side of the horizon. And he had a friend on the opposite side of the horizon. And this is what his friend was seeing. This is the same boat. Right? Now, the difference between these two things is that what Travis is looking at is obviously an inferior mirage. Now, the inferior mirage doesn't happen until the horizon, because the inferior mirage will create the horizon. Okay, it creates, some people will call it a false horizon. I don't personally like that, calling it a false horizon, because it is just the horizon. It's where we see it. The only one that I would ever say is a false horizon is the one where you clearly see the ship just floating up above and the horizon way behind it was sky. And it's that clear floating ship thing, because we know that the horizon, we can actually see the horizon behind there when you drop the levels. That's purely just an effect of smooth water and rough water, and the smooth water mimicking the sky color. So that would be the only one that I would ever really call a false horizon. Apart from that, whatever we see is just the horizon, and it's just the horizon where we see it. Now, here on this left image, we see now the horizon cutting across the entire hull of the ship. Now, if we just move one further over and we place water there, now we see where the horizon is actually cutting straight across. Now, on the right image, around here is where the mirage is actually happening. This is where all this is an inferior mirage. If this inferior mirage was to disappear, as Travis has filmed on many other occasions, he's seen the shore down here. And if he was seeing the shore down here, it wouldn't look the same as this one, but you would see the horizon above the boat. Because as the horizon moves further away, everything must obey perspective. And when considering the horizon is the furthest visual point that you can see, when something obeys perspective and now the horizon moves further away, this boat here would then appear to drop down and be lower on the ground, just like this one. And the horizon would move further behind the boat, and the boat would appear to drop like this. And you would just see the horizon behind the boat. But here we see that on this side of the horizon, we still have this visual ramp, and we have the horizon here appearing to be above the boat. Now, this boat is not actually below that horizon line. We know that is the water, and the water is not actually above this point. This is all visual. Okay, so here is one that is from my footage, my photos, and it's basically the same thing, but I've actually got them where I had one on my side of the horizon and one on the opposite side of the horizon. So this is basically the exact same image as what they just had, but I've got it just all happening right in front of me at the same time with two different boats. They just happen to virtually be at more than likely a very similar point away from the horizon, very similar distance away from the horizon. So now if I was to just cover that one on the left with water and put a little boat on the right, the only difference between these is that if we go back here, the one on the left-hand side, because it's closer to me, obviously that sail is going to be much larger than the one that's much further away from me, right? So that's the main difference here. But you can see that if I just do this, we've just reversed the image again. And people have always said, like that boat on the left, they're going, what are you trying to say, that this is what's happening? Like all this is below the horizon. Well, what are you trying to say, that this is happening? Yeah, exactly. What we're seeing is perspective on that's happening on the opposite side of the horizon, because to someone on the opposite side of that horizon, the boat on the right that I've got pictured there now, that's exactly what they would see. They would actually see the opposite of what I'm seeing here. To them, my boat would be in the inferior mirage, the one that's on the front, that one that we can see the entire thing. That would be in an inferior mirage for them. And the boat on the right, they would see the entire thing. You would just reverse this image for them. But they would have this visual ramp in front of them, just the same as I have this visual ramp in front of me. Okay, so in reality, do we see things dropping below the horizon in this perspective as I've just discovered, as I've just shown? So what we're going to see here is two objects, two boats moving away from the horizon. And I think I've got this one in reverse, so they end up coming back as well. So we see as this moves away from the horizon, it is dropping below the horizon. The one on the right, like in the center on the right image, what I've done is just overlaid kind of like water there to represent like this is what you would be seeing from the opposite side of the horizon. You're actually seeing that sail disappear. Right? So we see this boat, the sailboat in the middle, disappearing from the bottom up as it comes towards me. People on the opposite side of the horizon would be seeing that sail drop below the horizon, or that whole boat dropping below the horizon, just as I am also witnessing that boat drop below the horizon. This is the exact same effect, right? And again, we know that what's happening on my side of the horizon is just purely perspective, right? And
Sorry?
we know that what's going on there on my side of the horizon is perspective, because what's going on is, as we'll go into this, but as you move further away, due to our perspective grid that we see in this ramping up, everything that is closer to us will appear to be low. Everything further away from us will appear to rise up. We're going to go much deeper into that.
Can I
So-
possibly real quickly add something?
Sure.
Because maybe I'm wrong, correct me if it's so, but from the two images which you show where the overlay is in the middle of the screen, compared to the ship observation, the observed distances in a way vary to each other, right? So the observed distance to the ship would be more than in the example you show in the center, right? Can that be? Yeah, and so I would like to add that the optical irregularities which might distort the relationship which we would expect from the decreasing of angular size can come from the additional distance in this observation, because there might be more refraction at play.
Yeah, well, we definitely will.
Because in a way, when you show the footage, we can see that the ship which disappears behind the horizon in a way gets optically disordered as well, and gets kind of compressed or stretched, you know, like in the initial footage you showed with the horizon. So I would just like to add real carefully that we here in the ship example see still some distortion which are caused by optical factors, and that's why there is a small irregularity compared to the footage you show in the center. but from the facts you tell or from the observed phenomenon in its essence, I can agree. I just wanted to add that.
Sure. Now, the big ship that I'm showing there is also in an inferior mirage, and I've always liked to give a lot of people a lot of crap because they like to just show things in inferior mirages. A lot of people think that I'm kind of obsessed with inferior mirages, sorry, because people are always showing things in inferior mirages, and I'm getting it all the time, like constantly. Every time I present something, someone will be like, "What about this? This isn't in an inferior mirage." And then I look at it, I'm like, "Well, it actually is. Look here. Here's the signs. This is what you need to look for. You just don't know what you're looking for. You are showing me something in an inferior mirage." And then all of a sudden I get told, "Oh, you're just obsessed with inferior mirages." And I'm like, "No, you guys just keep showing me things that are inferior mirages. You've got to show things that aren't." Now, it doesn't need to be an inferior mirage to obviously disappear behind the horizon because it happens mirage or no mirage. Just the same
Of course, yes.
like it doesn't matter. Now, when we get an inferior mirage, we get a magnification of the image. The image will be larger because technically, let's just say here, when we're looking at this ship, that horizon is closer to about 3.5 to 4 miles away from me. So what we're actually seeing is an image that is starting at 3.5 to 4 miles away. So that is technically kind of closer to me. And the mirage, an inferior mirage, always magnifies an image. Just as if we get a magnifying glass, you're going to see that image get bigger. The difference is, though, is that it really only magnifies vertically. It doesn't magnify horizontally. I had a good discussion with Jesse Path of Light about this, where he was asking me if I think that things are magnifying horizontally. And I was like, well, I think they are, but let me just go check all these different observations. So I went and looked, and I looked at all these different comparisons that I've got of what would be called looming days compared to inferior mirage days. And I was like, oh, actually, you know what? We're not really getting a vertical magnification. There will be instances where there will be when you get really crazy compression and so forth of the images that are beyond the horizon. But in general, you're really only getting a vertical image magnification, not a horizontal image magnification. So it's slightly different than a normal magnifying glass. But we're going to move on.
Yeah, thanks
And
for
this,
that clarification.
no worries, man. Any input is all good because any clarifications that anyone else has for maybe things that I'm saying, then you're welcome to put them in as well. Or if anyone has a question and they want me to clarify something, by all means, let me know. And so
this has been beautiful. Thank you so much for hosting this event.
no problem, man. No worries. Yeah, this has been 3 years worth of footage. And I actually worked out that on average, I've gone out about every 1.5 days and filmed for the past 3 years.
Wow,
And that's also
commitment.
that's also including having literally 4 months off over that time where I was just working in my garden. So it's not even, like I started at the beginning of 2023, and I've had literal 4 months off over that time as well. I've been out almost 700 days.
I'm curious though, you working with this so much. What is a mirage? And we have an audience watching this, so just since you are working with this as much as you do.
Well, a mirage technically, I guess you could say, is an inverted image of the real image. So you'll have the actual image, and you have what's called an inferior mirage, which is where you'll have the inverted image underneath, and a superior mirage is where you'll have the inverted image on top. But then you can have Fata Morganas, and that is generally an on top, more distorted image. Or then you can have what's called complex superior mirages, and that is where you get an inversion of an inversion of an inversion. So you can get like 3 or 4 layered images inverting from, going right way up to upside down, back to right way up, back to upside down. So you can get many. I think the most I've seen is 4 or 5 inverted images, like personally from what I've filmed. I don't know if that's a good enough explanation for you or for anyone, but it's all I got for you. So here here's what we just looked at with that little ship, with the little sailing boat. And I put up there, remind you of anything, because as that boat gets closer to us, we just cover the water there. We see it literally disappearing below the horizon. And you can see that what we'd be seeing from the other side, anyone who's looking from the opposite side of that horizon would be watching that sail drop below the horizon. And I'm going to show you shortly. And first of all, we're about to watch a whole bunch of footage of what is going on in front of the horizon. And then I'm actually going to show you where me, a friend of mine, or two friends, one in a boat, one on one jetty, me on another jetty, and the boat traveling from jetty to jetty. And we'll see what happens. And we'll see if what I've described to you, if that is exactly what happens. So here we have the same thing where I've just overlaid water on the right-hand side, representing this thing being below the horizon. And this is actually a GIF that I made, and we will actually see the real image. And what we're going to do is we're going to watch it as it moves towards the horizon, because remember, this is what's happening. It's moving towards the horizon. And as it moves towards the horizon, it will appear to rise up above the horizon. And if we just reverse it, now as it moves away from the horizon, we will see it drop below the horizon. Okay, so it moves towards the horizon, it will appear to rise. And then when it moves away from the horizon, it will appear to drop. Right? Now, is this just some random thing? Is it something that just happens every now and then? Or is it something that happens all the time? Right? Because, maybe someone would say, well, that's just random. Well, it's not random. This is what we see constantly. These are lagging a bit, aren't they? That's a bit of a bugger. But I'm going to show you a couple of them anyway. But so this is an effect that happens, and it would happen no matter where you go in the world. This is what you're going to see, because it doesn't matter where you go in the world. As you raise your height, you get this larger visual ramp. You get this visual ramp. That is what causes the visual ramp in the first place. Right? So here we have this boat here, and we see the horizon there behind it. It now drops fully below the horizon, and now it goes towards the horizon, and we see it rise up again. Now, I will just do this so that I can control it a bit more. And we see that this point the horizon is cutting across the boat here now. We bring it closer. The horizon is now cutting up here. And what's this boat doing? It's moving away from the horizon. What did we establish earlier? That when something moves away from the horizon, it will appear to drop below the horizon until it's moved far away from the horizon, that it now drops completely below the horizon.
So what are you saying is sorry to cut you off. What are you saying?
Right.
Are you saying the horizon is physical?
No, it's purely optical.
It's optical, so it's just a jargon within the perspective, yeah?
It's what, sorry?
Like a jargon, like it's a jargon is like an academic word.
I don't know the word. Can you explain what that means? What do you?
Like it's a concept within a specific field. So within perspective, horizon is an abstraction, sort of like a category.
Right, yeah.
I'm just curious. What do you mean by horizon? Like if we went to the horizon, there wouldn't it move perpendicular to our position in like a fixed,
of course, the horizon
sort of
follows
fixed distance? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to actually show this when I do another part of this presentation, which is where I introduce what I call the way that we see within a cone of perspective. We'll go over that,
but are you saying that? It seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems to me that you're saying that this miraging effect is happening together with the horizon. Is that so?
Well, this isn't anything to do with any miraging effect. So it's not that the horizon is a miraging effect. The horizon is actually an effect of refraction, but nothing to do with the horizon. It
but
can
of
be
course,
miraging.
Of course, someone will agree to disagree on this specific point, as you likely know.
In what sense?
Well, first and foremost, I hope you can tell that me just asking you questions and talking back to you is purely attempting to engage with you unbiased, because
Yeah,
we
no,
have
that's fine. Yeah, no
yeah
worries.
yeah. I'm just curious. I think this is another terminology that would be important to sort of establish, if you could define horizon within the paradigm or the position that you speak from. Like what specifically is a horizon when you talk about it?
He
Well,
explained
like I
it in the
said,
beginning, Ziak. Maybe you missed it. He explained
It
everything.
could be. Yeah, I apologize if I did that.
that's right. So the horizon is
Let's
what
let
I
him do
call
his
the
thing, bro.
dividing line of perspective, right? So the horizon is the dividing line of perspective. So we have perspective on this side, we have perspective on the opposite side. At the moment, what we're doing is, due to our height above the horizon, is we're seeing the perspective of this boat, because this boat is shorter than what I am. So as it gets closer to me, it is going to appear to drop below the horizon.
Yes.
As it
So
moves,
so you agree that it's an imaginary horizontal line that represents the viewer's eye level, correct?
yes.
Yeah. So the horizon does not exist in actuality, correct?
Well, I mean, it does and it doesn't, in a sense. I mean, clearly it does. It
Let me
does
yeah,
exist, but
sorry, let me be more concrete. So it's not concretively real, but it exists concretively as an abstract phenomena. Like it's
yes,
something that we imagine and then project onto as an explanation or signification to attempt like give language or provide sort of description or signification to something specific. Would you say?
yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
because I mean,
yeah.
it's purely an optical event. And what I'm going to show before later, I'll go over that in a bit because I want some interaction when we get there. So, and again, here we see the boat move up or appear to rise up. We know that this is lagging a bit, but we know that this appearing to rise or appearing to fall is all just purely optical. There is no actual rise and fall, just as there is no actual rise and fall on the opposite side. It's all just optical. So here we have a little sailing boat, and as he cruises away, we see that now the sail is getting higher and higher, and in relation to the horizon, it's appearing to rise up as it moves towards the horizon until it reaches the horizon, which is on this day, the inferior mirage is what's creating the horizon on this day. And now it starts to move into the inferior mirage, and we will start to see it disappear from the bottom.
But if we attempt to take a step back and just purely speak scientifically without presuming the explanation to this optical event, isn't it, I'm trying to respect anyone who doesn't automatically sort of, sorry if this sounds the way it does, but jump to the conclusion of sphericity or globe or whatever it's called. I'm trying to be unbiased, so that's why I'm engaging in the way that I do. So I'm curious, and I'm asking you this: does this optical event, as we could call it, I will agree with you at that. We can call it sort of like an optical event or a sign that we project onto something as of now that is sort of difficult to explain, although you provide a model to attempt to explain it with. Yeah. um, is this happenstance that we see, does it necessitate the globe model, or like how could that not work, for example, on a flat earth or something else? I'm not a flat earth theorist myself. I'm just curious, I'm engaging with you just to
No, that's
attempt
okay.
to
So what I'm
understand
going
this
to,
deeper. Yeah.
yeah, so what I'm going to go over is basically how that perspective is always described over a flat surface. Perspective is always described over a flat surface. This is what perspective is. Perspective is like, I'll just say it again, it's always described over a flat surface. Now, I'm showing you what's going on in the real world of like macro observations. But then if we were to go in and we were to look at all of Sky Free's stuff, where they show what's going on the micro level, and it's all done over a flat surface, they show all the exact same things happening. So we know perspective is always described over a flat surface. What I'm showing you is happening purely because of perspective. What Sky Free shows you over a flat surface is all happening because of perspective. So everything is pointing towards a flat surface. It's not pointing towards a globe. So
I got a question.
what I'm doing, yeah, sorry, just give
I'm
me 1
sorry.
second.
I'm sorry.
So what I'm doing is just literally showing you how this works over a flat surface and how it can be designed into a working flat Earth model on how we see. And what I'm basically calling it is the horizon perspective model, right? Because I do have a lot of other stuff which we won't be able to get into today because it would take another 4 hours to delve through that. But we can actually design an entire working flat Earth model from this and how observation works and how we see things in the distance. Yeah, sorry, man. Go on with the question.
Okay, so you mentioned that all of Skyfree's stuff is done over a flat surface. How is it determined that the surfaces that they use are perfectly flat?
Well, they use their floor, so that's a flat surface. Unless you think
Again,
that
that
there's some kind
again,
of
like
kink in the floor.
how was it determined that the surface was perfectly flat?
Well, you'd have to determine that it's not perfectly flat first. You'd have to prove that it's not, because it's a
Well,
standard floor. So if you want to make an argument that when someone lays a floor, they lay a floor with a curve in the middle of it, which sure that can happen, you know, if it's wood, but I think that you just be almost arguing for the sake of arguing, like, oh, they had to have had a curved surface. And then when they do their observations over a lake or over a water surface, their observations are generally over a few hundred feet, and they're doing them from about a 1-inch observer height. So there is no technical curve on an Earth over just a few hundred feet for them to be getting what they're getting.
well, there is, but it's very, very, very small. But again, like, I
Well,
mean, you
that's
did
just
say you said they were done over a flat surface, but again, you haven't determined that the surface was perfectly flat. I don't think a surface exists in reality that is perfectly flat.
Yeah, well, then that's just playing semantics, because you could say that the ocean isn't obviously perfectly flat because it's got waves, it's got swell. You know, I mean, a wood surface has got grain in it, so it's not perfectly flat. I mean, what are we going to get? I mean, even Neil deGrasse Tyson says, well, if we bring the Earth down to the size of a cue ball, it'd be the smoothest cue ball in the world, right? So even a cue ball isn't perfectly flat, that surface. That's not perfectly smooth. So what is perfectly flat? Like, everything's going to have ridges in it, right?
Perfectly
So
flat would mean
the
absolutely no curvature at all.
yeah, but there's always going to be some kind of ridges in any flat surface. No matter how perfectly flat you think that surface is, I mean, what are you going to have to do? You get some kind of full-blown machined, polished surface that it would probably still have some kind of ridges in it. So we're just playing a
Okay.
game of semantics there.
All right. My next question is, so let's say the Earth was curved, right? There was curvature in the ocean. What would things look like over distance?
Well, obviously, over distance, when it goes beyond, we would see it disappear. That's just plain and
So
simple.
basically, you would see things disappear from bottom up, correct? Over a curved
Of
surface.
course you would.
Okay.
No, I don't think anyone would say that wouldn't happen. That would just be silly.
So what? So basically, what you're explaining things on a supposed flat surface, doing exactly what we would expect over a curved surface. So how would we tell the difference?
Well, no, because what I'm showing you is what's going on in front of the horizon. I don't really care about what's going on beyond the horizon. So what I'm doing is I'm showing you what's happening in front of the horizon, and what I'm showing you is happening in front of the horizon is due to perspective and your height above the surface, not due to a curved surface.
Yeah, but how would we tell the difference?
Well, people have gone out and done multiple observations. I've got observations here where I've had someone on the sand at 10 miles away. They've put a mirror on the sand. I've got mirror flashes from there. You know, there's been multiple examples and experiments done of mirror flashes from these areas at 12.5 miles. People have had them from 19 miles. There's been 35-mile laser tests, right? So we can keep playing this game of semantics of is it flat or is it not flat, but we've got plenty of evidence to prove that over these short distances we can show that it's flat. Now, how many short distances of flat surface does it take to make a curve?
I'm sorry for interrupting you earlier. I think we should get back to you having the presentation. I apologize if I created this intention in the room where people think they can ask questions. It was not my meaning. So, sorry guys, he's holding an event. So if Plain Reality can just get back to his event and presentation, then I think that is what we should be doing.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Otherwise, we'll be here forever. Okay, so I'm just showing you more examples of this. Now, on this day here, you can see this is a very flat ocean day. It's just an inferior mirage, so we don't see as far. And no matter what the conditions are, it doesn't matter. We will always see things appear to drop as they come closer towards you and move further away from the horizon. And as they move closer to the horizon, we will see those things appear to rise up above the horizon. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going over a few different examples so people can actually see that this isn't just any kind of one-off event. This is just what happens all day, every day. You can walk outside, or if you can go to the beach yourself and you can have a look at this, you will all see that everything that's further in the distance will appear to be higher. Everything that's closer to you will appear to be lower. This is not some kind of random event. Right, we can get out of here. Now, going by what we've just shown, looking at these two boats, which is the same boat on the same day, one was going away from me to the left and then it came back to the right. So just by looking at this, which one of these two would you say is closer to the horizon? One on the left or one on the right?
Well, honestly, there's no way to tell.
Well, no, there is. If you don't know how to tell, then you obviously haven't been paying attention. Right? So can anyone tell me which one's closer to the horizon?
The right one.
Exactly. The right one's closer to the horizon. The left one is
How
further away.
How are we figuring that? Because it seems like the picture's cropped. We don't know the distance from the observer to the boat. We don't know the height. So I'm not sure how you're making that distinction.
Because we established the specs before, bro.
Yeah, and the height is exactly the
see
same.
the person.
I'm in the same spot. Right now, I don't know. It's not. I don't think it's actually a person. I don't know. I think they've just covered something there. But see how the horizon cuts all the way up here in this image? This is showing us that this one is closer. Now you see the horizon here? That's telling us this one is further away, because as anything moves closer to the horizon, it will appear to rise up. When it moves further away from the horizon, it will appear to drop. So we know that this one is closer. We know this one is further away. This is from the exact same observer height, from the exact same observer position.
Is the boat closer to the observer?
This boat is closer to me now. This boat is further away.
Okay.
So this is that observation. And I will speed it up. So here we see this is the part of the first observation, and same thing happens. We see it coming, and as it gets closer and closer, we see the horizon getting higher and higher in relation to the boat. And there it is.
I think that's I'm sorry. I think that's getting higher and higher because the person who's holding the camera is focusing on the boat and not on the horizon.
No, that's irrelevant.
Okay.
It's not focusing on the boat at all.
Okay.
It's got nothing to do with focusing on the boat, because I'm still focused on the boat there, but the horizon's lower, right?
Yeah, it's because the person's moving the camera.
No, the camera's in the exact same position.
Okay.
It's just panning from left to right. This is my work. This is what I've filmed. This is from the exact same location. I am just following the boat. And then as it moves away, we see it start to rise up again. And then I didn't realize, but I picked it up as it was coming back. And now it's slightly further away from me. And we know that it's slightly further away because when it gets to a point that's pretty much horizontal with where I am, we see the horizon cutting here now. It doesn't go up here. So now we know this boat is further away. If it was way further away, the horizon, as you will see when we go, as I've been showing, as it gets further away, the horizon will now be here, right? Because as anything is further away from you in relation to the horizon, you will see the horizon changing positions in relation to that object. As it moves closer to the horizon, it will appear to rise up onto the horizon. Okay, I know this is going to get redundant, but it's kind of got to be drummed in there in a sense because you need to see it many times. Now, I know some people aren't going to need to see it this many times. They're probably going, yeah, we got it, bro. It makes total sense. But some people are going to need to see this multiple times. And not just because, they're dumb or anything like that. It's just that it's such a new concept on how things are actually working. So remember how we were going over this before, right? Okay. So here we go into an actual observation. So remember how I said that this is what happens. As we're here, this person watches the boat go there, it reaches the horizon, and then they watch it drop off. This person here watches that boat when it hits the horizon come back down. So does that actually happen in reality? Is that what two people see when you're watching a boat come towards you? All right. So from here, this is a friend of mine. I got him to take his boat, and I actually wanted him to go straight across to, there's a jetty right there. You can just kind of see it in the distance. But I didn't realize that obviously I have this privileged thing where I can see the jetty there. And if we look here, he can't see the jetty, or he wouldn't be able to see the jetty. So he's following his GPS. I wanted him to just go straight across to make life easy for us. But this was the first time we've done this observation, and hopefully we're going to do it again this week from a further distance, and we're going to do a couple of them. So he ended up going way out to the left because that's where his GPS took him, and then he cut back down and went towards the jetty over here. So my friend was having a hard time kind of finding him because we did have quite a heavy inferior mirage this day. But so what we witness here is you see this ramping. He's going up on a visual ramp. It's not real. We know it's not real. It's all visual. He's going on a visual ramp up towards the horizon. Now, my friend still couldn't see him yet because my friend was looking straight across. So he thought he was going to be coming straight across. And I'm like, he's cut out. He'll be on your right-hand side. So my friend should have been able to see him around about now, but he was still looking. But it was a pretty heavy inferior mirage on this day. He still hadn't spotted him yet. But we see him coming up on the horizon now. He's now reached the horizon. And now my friend's looking for him. And I've told him, and there he is. He spotted him just here now. Right? So because this is an inferior mirage, him being above the horizon doesn't mean that he's going to see him, right? Because this horizon on this day was approximately 3 miles away. Between the two of us, there is 8 miles distance. So I had a 3 mile distant horizon. He also had a 3 mile distant horizon. So there was 2 miles of miraging in between us. So as you're going to see the boat for him is going, we already see his little visual ramp here. We see my visual ramp here. Now, as the boat now has broken past his horizon and is coming towards him, we will see his horizon go, oh, I've already lost it just there. Sorry. Let's go back a little bit. Right. That's him for me. We've watched him disappearing. So he's coming back in as he gets higher up on the horizon here. Now, he starts to disappear for me, and due to this being an inferior mirage, he's now gone. But my friend is now watching him come down on his visual ramp until we see a position just here where we see a horizon up here. This is where the horizon is here. This area over here is called Glenelg. It's 5 miles away. This is called Henley. It's just about 1.25 miles away. And the horizon is, if I go just a tiny bit further, whoop, so the horizon is just there. Right? So we see the bottom of, or the top of his boat here and the horizon all the way up here. So he's just watched his boat come down. I watched mine go up. He watched his come down. Now he picks it up here again as it now moves away from him and is coming towards me. I can't see him yet. I'm trying to find him because we had to look, and there he goes. There he appears for me now. I find him, and now he starts to come up, and we see him rising up here onto the horizon. And I see him come more into my vision as he starts to break through the mirage. My friend now has him in the mirage, so he's now climbed right up out of this horizon to the top of it and is now starting to disappear. And now, as he's about to break past the horizon here and get out of the inferior mirage, I will see him start to drop into my vision. My friend is going to start to lose him here, and I'm sorry about the fact that my friend had it very unfocused. It was the first time he was doing any of this. And now we will watch the boat come back down towards me in the visual ramp. So when I described this and how this works, it wasn't just on what I think is going to happen, it's what actually happens, right? So this is what's actually going on. So does anyone have any questions on that? Or was that pretty self-explanatory?
It's great.
Right, so this is a part of perspective that we'd never known before, right? So this is why I call perspective the dividing line, or sorry, why I call horizon the dividing line of perspective, because this is my perspective on my side of the horizon. Once it gets to his side, this is his perspective. This horizon line has divided his perspective from my perspective, right? Because this visual ramp is all just perspective. This visual ramp is all just perspective. The horizon is dividing both of these. Now, some people might be like, oh, but that's a mirage. Okay, yeah, cool. It doesn't really matter. It's a horizon. Globers forever have shown us things in inferior mirages and said, this is the globe. Why is this disappearing? So you can't get out of it now. You can't turn around now and say, oh, well, that's just a mirage. It's got nothing to do with what's going on. Because I will be doing this on a day when there is no mirage and we will get the exact same effect. It's not going to change. A horizon is a horizon is a horizon. We are dividing perspective between these. Obviously, this is lagging. Right. So
yeah, these are great visualizations. So I don't want to shift it, but it just makes me think of how, when they talk about the geometric horizon and these different refracted horizons, but when you're getting this mirrored effect like you're showing, I mean, not to open up a whole nother topic with that, but it's definitely is food for thought and considering, when they're claiming the horizon is moving all around, but if you're getting this mirrored effect that's consistent from both sides, it's an interesting, like, kind of control factor, kind of grounding it and being able to see it, in that instead of just seeing it one way and making claims, you're actually being able to see it from both sides. So yeah, it's great visualizations.
Yeah, thanks. So the next one we're going to do is I'm going to make sure that the temperature is getting up to more like around 26 degrees Celsius. And the water temperature for us at the moment is around 17 to 18 or somewhere around there. So there will be, or there should be no inferior mirage. So I'm going to go to the 12.5 mile mark and my friend will be on the my normal jetty and the boat's going to go in between us from there. So we're going to do it where there is no inferior mirage and we will still see the same effect. I mean, I'm not even guessing that we're going to see the same effect. I'm telling you we are going to see the same effect. I don't need to guess about it because it's just how observation works.
And what effect is that?
The effect of perspective, this visual ramp, the exact effect that I just showed you in that previous video.
Meaning like So one of you is going to be on one side, and another person is going to be on the other side. And you're not going to be able to see that boat until it gets to a certain point.
Yeah, well, I mean, it all
Okay.
depends, right? Just okay. Now that you've asked that, I will quickly show you this, right? Because which one's this? No, I think that's the wrong one. I'll go to this one.
I mean, to me, it seems like you're literally describing what a curved surface would also do.
Yeah, that's what someone
So
might try
what?
and
How
say.
would we? So how would we determine the difference between a curved surface and a flat surface, depending on based on what you're saying?
Well, you can still say that it's a curved surface. That's totally cool if that's what you want to say. But what I am showing you is something that we've been asked to show forever. How does this work on a flat earth, or how does this work? I'm showing you how it works, right? This is a demonstration that has never been seen before, talked about before, and I'm showing you how it works on a flat earth. And like I said before, that when we see this over flat surfaces, now also what I'm going to do, I should have taken a picture of it. I'm actually making a perspective grid that's going to be 10 meters long, so 30 feet long. It's 40 centimeters by 40 centimeters square with a 20 centimeter tube in the middle. So imagine it like it's not a cube, like a rectangle cube type thing. And then there's going to be 50 sections of those all connected together. And I'm putting like an acrylic perspex sheet, and then I'm going to fill that with water. And then I'm just going to film the effects of what happened as I'm going to experiment with warming up the water, cooling the water down, and we will get all these same effects. Now, if you want to tell me that over that 30 meters that there's any curve to, or sorry, 30 feet, that there's any curve to write home about, then we can have another conversation. But I'm going to show you when I do those experiments that it happens over just a 30-foot surface, that I can get this same effect over water over just a 30-foot surface.
And how exactly are you going to determine that in this 30-foot span that is not going to be any curvature at all?
So you can go and work out how much curvature there should be over a 30-foot surface. And if you
No, I mean
think,
whatever you're going to use. Like, are you claiming that it's going to be perfectly flat?
well, I'm going to use water.
Okay.
I'm going to fill
So
it with water.
you're going to make a 30-foot. I'm sorry. Can you explain it to me then, please?
30 feet by 40 centimeters, 30 feet long by 40 centimeters wide. Then just imagine putting a little 10 centimeter lip all the way around it and filling that with water. Just 10 centimeters of it with water. It's going to be 40 around.
And are
Can
you
you
going to put
imagine
like
it?
are you going to put like a little boat on it or something? Like,
I'm going to
I'm not
put
sure
a
exactly
bunch
what
of
you.
things. I'll put little boats on it. I'll put like little cliffs in there. I'll put a whole bunch of stuff around at different distances. So I've got grids at every 20 centimeters. So I can literally mark where each 20 centimeter point is. So if I see an inferior mirage over that point, I'll be able to tell you exactly where that inferior mirage is, how far away it is, or whether and we'll be able to watch it move forward and backwards.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to
So
change the temperature of the water. It's a good time for me to be doing it right now because we're about to go into summer, so it's going to get quite hot. If I need to enclose the area, I'll enclose it so I can maybe trap a little bit more moisture in the air. But yeah, so I'm going to do experiments there. So if people then want to say that over this 30-foot surface, there's some crazy amount of curvature going on, well, I think now we're just going to be living in fantasy land. If I can show you that the same thing happens over a 30-foot surface as what happens over a miles of surface, and Skyfree showed it over just a few hundred feet, and they showed it over their ground, like we're building a pretty strong case.
I think the point of it would be to show what happens when there isn't a mirage, not create a mirage and claim what's going on behind within the mirage. Do
Yeah,
something
well,
where there isn't.
that's why I'm going to do the observation when there is no mirage.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so let's just move on here. So let's just imagine that that observation that I did before is from the left-hand jetty to the right-hand jetty, and we see their little circles here in the middle again. That would be the horizon. So now what I've done is I've put a person on the horizon, right? on what would be their horizon in the middle. Now, he's not going to see what they see. They're going to watch a boat go up on that ramp. Now, I didn't put more boats in here because it would get way too confusing, but they would see
Hold on.
these red arrows. When their
Why
boat goes
wouldn't
up,
they see?
sorry?
Hold on. So, I'm sorry. Why wouldn't? So you have a boat on the left and a boat on the right, and in the center you have where it looks like it's going down. Like, why would that happen?
Perspective.
Perspective is what I don't understand what you mean by showing it going down, because that wouldn't be perspective.
Yeah, it
Don't
is.
understand that.
It's how perspective works. Perspective always will give us a visual ramp. Whether you rise up 1 millimeter above the surface or whether you rise up 1,000 feet, 100,000
Yeah,
feet, you will get
when I think of
perspective.
I'm sorry. When I think of perspective, I'm thinking of like a hallway. I'm not thinking of an orthographic view side to side. I'm thinking of a hallway when I think of perspective.
Yeah, well, this is trying to give you a visual representation of perspective from an orthographic view, but showing you the perspective of things going up or down, right? As much as I can from an orthographic view as well, because obviously we know that you only see straight forward, and I don't know if you were here for the start where I showed that boat in a pure perspective going away from us, right? So they can't actually see each other, but this is what this person would see in the middle. That's he's seeing his horizon go all the way around that circle. He's going to actually watch those boats come down towards him, but they would actually be watching the boats go up. I mean, I should have put the boats in there, but they'd be watching those boats go up. And so the boats would be on the horizon there. Now, this was meant to be with the other things. Now, if we remove them, and let's just say we had a day where the horizon was, let's just say that center cross is 3 miles away, but let's say the horizon today is 6 miles away. Well, he would see that boat up high and she would see that boat down low. And as they move away, they're just going to watch it go all the way now. There is not going to be any rise and fall. It's just going to be a rise for her and a fall for him. Now, I'm not sure if that was really explained properly, because I probably should have put that in with the other section. So that was something that I was going to show, but it sort of panned out that way. If you have any questions on that, you can ask.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That didn't make any sense at all. The way you should really be doing this is you should be putting a boat like going away from you in a flat hallway or some sort of flat surface, right? And then you have a section on the boat that is the same exact height as your camera, right? And then you can say, okay, my camera is at 10 feet, and then on this part of the boat is also 10 feet. And if it's a flat surface, then height should never change, right? The perspective
Well, that's not
of the
actually
boat
true,
and
because then you
the
have to, if you're at 10 feet, you're
uh,
going to have to account for refraction then, and refraction is going to lower the image. So it's not necessarily always going to stay perfectly at that 10 foot, because now once it gets further away, we're going to have to start talking refraction.
yeah, but refraction. Okay, I don't want to argue about refraction because it works in the opposite direction that you guys claim. But okay,
So anyway,
I mean, because I have an observation where a gentleman has a camera working on a boat, right? The height of the camera doesn't change, and as the boat moves away, the boat gets lower and lower and lower. It doesn't get higher; it gets lower.
All right.
yeah.
Well, just keep in mind, B-ball. He is giving a presentation. He's giving a presentation with some like short interjections and questions. There might be a more open discussion after. But just keep in mind, it's not just open panel. He is giving a presentation, but it's up to you, Plain, if you want to, either.
No, let's just continue. Let's continue, and we can get into more deeper questions when we actually finish. Otherwise, we'll be here literally for 5 hours. Okay, so here again we have our visual ramp. All right, so this is this guy, Steve Bruick. I don't know him. He's not a flat earther. He's just obviously got a camera outside his house or something. And we see this visual ramp here. Now, if we were to just overlay where the horizon is, and you were on the opposite side of the horizon, the same distance, you wouldn't be seeing any of this below here. All you would be seeing is these sails, and possibly you wouldn't even see them because they're just thin, and they'd be a long way away. So they could be way too small for you to even to see. Right? But that's how someone from the opposite side of the horizon on the same distance and the same height would see this observation. They're not going to see all of this. That would be completely out of their view, and it's due to their visual ramp. It's due to perspective, because as I've shown you, the horizon is the dividing line of perspective. So on the opposite side of that exists this. It's just the same thing, but now on the opposite side of this horizon. Okay, so sometimes perspective is referred to as a law. It's not actually a law, but it should be. Like it actually should be, because here it says no, perspective is not a law. Excuse me. Perspective is an artistic technique for creating illusion of depth and space on a flat surface, whereas a scientific law is a statement describing a relationship between phenomena that is always observed to occur under specific conditions, such as Newton's law of motion. Well, perspective is always observed under special conditions. It's observed at all times. There is never anything that you don't see in perspective. So why it's not a law or even a formal theory, I have no idea. It's not just some artistic thing. It's something that we see all the time without fail, no matter where you are, whether you're looking at something directly in front of you or whether you're looking at something miles in front of you. Everything we see in perspective. Right? So we have this, where this person, I forget his name, but his channel is called Vortex Pup. This is from a video called The Great Switcheroo.
I think that's Gavin, right? Gavin?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I don't remember. I've only watched it once before. But so we have this visual ramp. We have this upward. Why do we have that? Like, why is that in there in the first place? Why is this arrow lower than this one, which is lower than this one, or appears to be lower and lower until we get to the top one? Why are they all like that? Because this is a perspective grid, right? Now, I know that this, as far as observation is concerned, isn't technically right, because that first grid should be up around where that arrow is. There shouldn't really be, excuse me again, sorry. There shouldn't really be 8 or 9 grids before that. If we're talking looking over water, the first mile could be that entire area. And then the second mile might be the next 3 grids up. And then from mile 2 or 3 to mile 14 could be those last 2 or 3 grids. So, but no one ever draws a perspective grid like that because it wouldn't really work very well. And this is where we get a lot of compression as you get closer to the horizon. But so how do we get this from, so everything that's close to us is low and everything further away is higher visually. So what is causing this? Why do we have that in the first place? So let's just imagine that we're at the beach and it is the most still day, and we're getting a situation like that guy was describing before, where it was so perfectly flat. There was no ridges, there was nothing. It was just 100% flat. And we dug a deep hole, we stuck a helicopter in there, and we put your eye line so perfectly in line with the surface, with the ground, you can't see the surface, right? How are we going to get this? What do we need to do to create this visual ramp? So when you're here, and let's say we have a whole bunch of boats out there, how are we going to get them to look like this in the first place? How are we going to get this visual rising? So this is where we can have a tiny little bit of interaction. So how are we going to get this? What do I need to do to create that visual ramp?
Just raise the camera above the surface.
Bingo. We need to raise your height above the surface. So it's your height above the surface that creates the horizon in the first place. That's why we have a horizon. That's why there's a horizon on a flat Earth. Now, Refraction will then tell you how far away that horizon is. So refraction is going to cause that horizon to be closer to you or further from you. When it's closer to you, that horizon, depending on, like, if let's just say you're at a particular height, let's just say we can just say it's 6 feet, and on one day you have a horizon that is literally closer than a mile away from you, and then on another day, or maybe even 5 hours later, you go back there, and now that same horizon is 16, 17, 18, 20 miles away from you, right? That's refraction. Refraction is causing the distance to the horizon on where we see it, but it's actually your height above any surface that causes that horizon in the first place, and that is why we have perspective. Perspective is only there due to your height above the surface. That's why we see a visual ramp, right? So as you go up, this is what you're going to see. The clouds, you're going to lose the perspective. You're going to see less and less of the clouds as you go up until you get into a line with the clouds, and now you won't see any surface underneath or above the clouds until you start to go above. Once you go above, so this is all just perspective. We're just literally creating a new perspective as we go up. So is this lagging? God damn it.
A quick question.
Go.
Where is your vanishing point in this perspective grid?
Well, your vanishing point will always be the horizon.
Yeah, but your parallel lines that are on that surface are not converging.
Well, your parallel lines don't always have to converge. So if you drew a perspective grid across that entire surface, your lines aren't all going to converge to one point. That's just called, like 2-point perspective, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, but over a flat
Lines
surface,
aren't
it
always.
converge.
Well,
Never
no,
mind. Fine.
no, because these lines are still all converging. So if you actually see when people draw a perspective grid over an entire flat surface, they're not going to draw them all converging perfectly into one point, because something from 50 mile or mile away on your left and a mile away on your right doesn't all converge to one point unless you get to a certain height above the ground. Then you could say maybe they will converge to a point. But this is all just a representation. I'm not saying that this is 100% perfectly drawn, right? But this is the way that things are working. As we're going up, we're creating new perspectives within our entire field of view. So does this actually happen within a surface? As you drop down to the surface, is this what happens? Are you losing the perspective of everything above? Is your visual ramp disappearing? So unfortunately, this plane on this side didn't drop below the clouds in this video. Otherwise, I would have shown it go all the way down. But we see how as it's going down, the horizon is now beginning to become a line. We can just look at these clouds now being the ground. There's no difference between the clouds here and the ground. We go to the other one, we have more of a visual tunnel now. So we see all the clouds above starting to go down and the clouds underneath are getting a slight visual ramp. On the bottom left now, we're breaking out of there. We see our visual ramp gaining. The bottom and center, we're much further above the clouds. So now we could just replace those clouds underneath us with the ground and nothing different is happening. So perspective is just how we see the world. There's nothing that we don't see the world in as far as perspective is concerned. Right? And now we get even higher above the clouds on the one on the far right. And we see further. That's just how it is. It's got nothing to do with we're seeing further over a curve. It's purely just perspective and angles. Right? So this is how we're seeing. Everything is converging. Everything from high converges down to low, and everything from low converges up to high. Now here, there's just something that I did showing that as you drop all the way down to the surface, we start to completely lose perspective. And then as we rise back up again, perspective will grow and we now start to see where everything is in the distance. But when we get to this point here, we get to a point where everything begins to look in one line. Now, this isn't, I don't think this was 100% level. So if we were straight across here, we would see everything perfectly in one line. The only reason we'd know that that's further behind is because it's behind this. Now, if we just reverse that, when we upside down it, whoop, why didn't that work? And we pretend like these are clouds, as we go up to the clouds, the same thing is going to happen. And then we would break through the clouds, and then we would see perspective gain the opposite direction. None of this has anything to do with being on a globe. This is all just how perspective works. When we look at these clouds here, we get literal perfect grids and lines showing us this direction of how it's all going down as we watch here. And then on this side here, we see all these lines converging down to the ground on this side. If we had straight lines going across here, we would watch them all converge down to the ground. This happens 360 degrees around you. So maybe this isn't a perfect flat surface. I couldn't say, but even if it was a perfectly flat surface, even if it's not, but if it was perfectly flat, the same thing would happen. This wouldn't look any different. So even if there was just a slight incline in this, it wouldn't really matter. We would see the same thing. Everything that's moving off to the right-hand side there is going up towards the right. Everything going off to the left-hand side is going up towards the left. Everything we're looking there is a perfect description of perspective. If you draw this, you have to draw it in perspective because otherwise it won't look real. Because perspective is how we see the real world. Without it, we won't see the real world in the way that we do. It's not just some weird, arbitrary, artistic thing. It's literally how we see our entire world. Without it, we will not be able to even know what's in front of something else. How would we know what's below something if we don't have the vision of perspective? That's how we see. Now, this is just my computer desk. Everything, when we turn, we see everything moving up the further away it gets. Same thing, no matter where you go, no matter where you look, if you put things on the ground, if everyone's got a surface, if you've got a table just near you right now and you drop your eye level down to be perfectly in line with that surface and raise up, it's not like this is random stuff. I shouldn't be saying anything that's really controversial with that. But we've just lost the fact that literally everything that we see is perspective. Why do we think that now when we're looking beyond the horizon, that perspective changes? That now we're not seeing perspective as that happens. And that's why I'm putting forward that the horizon itself is the dividing line of perspective. It's where our convergence ends and divergence begins. Now, when we're looking here and we see these images here, I could say to you, well, which one is the further away horizon out of all of these? Now, you're not really going to know unless you really get out there and look. You're just going to see all of these. And to you, when you walk outside and you look at the horizon and you're not looking at it with some kind of high zoom camera, or you're not out at that same location day in and day out, you're not going to be able to understand whether or not that's a really far horizon or whether that's a close horizon. If you've been out and done this, hundreds of times, you'll walk out and you'll be able to know whether or not you're looking at an inferior miraged horizon or whether you're not. So when you're looking at that, you'll be like, okay, that's an inferior mirage. Clearly that's a close horizon. But if you don't have that, then you're not going to know. Or if you haven't gone out and done that, you're not going to know. So the average person walks outside or goes to the beach and just looks at the horizon. To them, that's just the horizon. They have no idea. This is why so many people keep saying like, oh, when you go and you're 6 foot above the ground, you have a 3 mile horizon. No, that's bullshit. You don't have a 3 mile horizon. How do you know that? Like, you don't know that unless you actually get out there and you have something that's at the 3 mile mark or some kind of marker in between there so that you can judge how far away that horizon is. And then you would have to also have a zoom camera of sorts so you can see exactly how far in front or behind the horizon that marker is. Then you'll be able to get some kind of an idea. And so this is where those 2 observations were done with that boat. So my friend was on Grange jetty there to the right, and I was on Brighton jetty. There's 8 miles between these two jetties. Okay, so this is 2 different days. Now, on the 12th of September, we can call this day 1, I had a horizon which was closer to 3.5 miles away, 3 to 3.5 miles away. So as I zoom in here, I know that when I'm on Grange, these are 3 miles away from me. And I know this is an area called Glenelg. There's a spot called Glenelg right here, and these are right out in front of the Glenelg jetty. And that is 5.5 miles away from me. And this is me looking, so if I'm looking from Grange, and these poles here are at the 3 mile mark. And my buoy, which is now not there anymore, would have been normally sitting around about here somewhere. It's not there anymore. We've got some crazy algae, blue algae or green algae or some kind of problem going on in the bay or in our peninsula. No one's really swimming, and I don't really know what all the buoys were, but they've taken most of the buoys away at the moment. But my normal yellow buoy would be sitting right here in between these two things. Well, yeah, it would have been just in front of this horizon. Right, so I know that that buoy is 3.5 miles away, and these are closer than that buoy. So I just say they're 3 miles away because they're definitely closer, and they're a reasonable distance. They may even be slightly closer than 3 miles. Right, so on this day here, I had a horizon that was 3.5 miles. And this side here, it's closer to 3 miles. Okay, and like I say, I'm judging that because I know these ones are 5 miles away. I know this is 2.5 miles away. We can see the inferior mirages coming up here. So all this is a mirage. That's 2.5 miles, and we've got to here, and we're really over here for this. So I'm just giving this in between there. So I'm giving it 3.5 miles because I know that this one here is a 3 mile horizon. So this could be closer to 3 miles as well. But this is how I can get a pretty good rough estimate. And I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm saying I can get a pretty good rough estimate of approximately how far away the horizon is from day to day. Something that most people don't really have. They don't really have these kind of markers. Now I went down to another area called Kingston Park and pointed back towards Brighton. And here is those markers at Glenelg. And from Kingston Park, they're 4.2 miles away. If I blow that up, so you can see that the horizon's in front of that because they're in the mirage. So I would have said that the horizon is probably closer to 3.5 miles away from Kingston Park looking towards Brighton. Now I'm getting to a point here, which we'll get to very shortly. Oh, we're buffering, sorry. Now, here on the 14th, now we have a horizon where we can see all the way to the jetty here. This here is pretty much where the horizon was in the previous image. It was cutting across this area here, and that's why we saw this part here miraging all the way down to here. It was all just a mirage. We can see all the way to the jetty here. And over here we see this other little part that I've got quite a few images of now. I've been just getting images of this for about 100 days now, so I can watch the horizon moving from day to day. And this is closer to 8.5 miles away. Right, and this is, depending on the tide, and I think this was, let me see. Okay, so we're in a little bit of a low tide. So this is from the bottom of this to here is probably about 8 feet. 8 to 10 feet maximum. There's no way to be more than 10 feet. Impossible for that to be more than 10 feet. So that's 8.5 miles away, and I'm at 20-foot observer height. And then if we go to the other side here, looking back from Brighton to Grange, we can see all the way down to the shore here. The shore level is 9.5 miles away. Okay, so on this day here, which was literally just a couple of days later, now we have a 9.5 to 9 mile horizon. And on this day, if we had been watching that boat, we just would have watched the boat go all the way. Now, that's what I was describing before in that other little animation, where on a day like this, if that boat just went from jetty to jetty, all we would see, if I'm here at Brighton, I would just see it go up, and he would have seen it here over here when he's at Grange, and the boat would be near Brighton. He would have just seen it come down. There would have been no horizon between us, because there's no horizon between us here now. That's why I did that observation on a day that had to be an inferior mirage, because that's the only way I'm going to get horizon in between the two of us at this distance is to have an inferior mirage. So this is an 8-mile distance. On the globe, we're meant to have a 5.5-mile horizon. That's your actual geometric horizon. Now, if they say standard refraction, that only just moves to about 6 miles. But I never see that. The only time I ever get a horizon that is in front of this jetty is during an inferior mirage. When the inferior mirage goes, 100% of the time, I see the shore down here, which is 9.5 miles away. That's 100% of the time. Whenever that mirage goes, I see 9.5 miles. That's not a sometimes thing. That's 100%. Now, let's just skip through that. Okay, so the horizon is a 360-degree circle around you. Not always 100% true, but we're just going to go with that because that's the general thing. Sometimes, you could be looking to the left and you've got an inferior mirage and the horizon's like, 3 miles away from you. You turn and look to the right and there's no inferior mirage, and now the horizon's more like 12, 14, 15 miles away from you. The conditions can be completely different looking from left to right. But let's just go for argument's sake. The horizon is a 360-degree circle around you. That can visually appear to be at your eye level. It can sometimes appear slightly lower and it can sometimes appear slightly higher, but it always appears to rise with the observer. That's how we see. Now, some people say it doesn't appear to rise with the observer. So if you think that it doesn't appear to rise with the observer, what do you think I'm doing here? Could anyone suggest what I might be doing here?
Just going up in altitude.
It's going up in altitude. And what does the horizon appear to do with me? It's appearing to rise with me. Right? So whether or not
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go on.
How exactly are you measuring that? Because did you have a gimbal on your camera to be able to measure whether or not the horizon was dropping?
Well, I mean, it's kind of irrelevant, right? Because
Well, you can't just eyeball it and say that the horizon was rising with you. You have to have some sort of measuring device.
well, what we have is a visual horizon, right? Now, let's say I had a theodolite, and which we'll show in a second, right? Now, this is a visual thing, right? So visually, it appears to rise with the observer. So as the observer rises, it appears to rise. Now, we can look over. So this is an observation that's at 330 meters looking towards Canigou. Now, you can see down there, just so I'll blow it up just so everyone can see it maybe slightly better. Right. You can see that this is an inferior mirage. You see this little line just here, how it's the color of the sun, and we see this little cutting in here. So at 330 meters above the surface, we're still getting inferior mirages. Now, according to the globe, the horizon should be around 45 miles here. But due to seeing this as an inferior mirage, this is going to be much closer. This could be only 20 miles away, this horizon. And when that happens, due to perspective, this is going to be lower. So when you see an inferior mirage, you will have a lower horizon. So whether or not the horizon is slightly lower than your eye level or whether it's slightly above your eye level is actually irrelevant, because on a day when you have inferior mirages, it will always be below your eye level, always. Now, this is from Jesse. We all know Jesse here. He has one day with his theodolite where the horizon is 28 feet above his eye level, and the other day where it's below his eye level. So walking out there with a theodolite and saying, well, this is exactly what's going on, it's almost pointless, because what are the conditions of the day that you're going out there in? You'd have to go back there day in, day out, over and over and over and over to get a measure of it. And I guarantee you there will be days where it's high and days where it's low. Now they're just going to go, oh, well, we'll do an average. There you go. It's dropping globe, right? But refraction is always going to be at play. And the higher you go, the more air you're looking through. So you're always going to get refraction. You're never going to, like, the higher you go, the further distance you're looking through. So you're just looking through more air. So you're getting even more refraction. And if you go up higher, you're just going to see even further, and you're going to look through more air. Now, if we just go back to this, well, this is at 330 meters high. We know that an inferior mirage causes upward refraction of light. So even at 330 meters high, we're getting upward refraction of light as you're looking down towards the surface. So I'm going to start trying to figure out other days that would be inferior mirages. And I've got an area where I can probably get to around about, I think 700 meters. So I'm going to go up there and see the inferior mirage from 700 meters, which is then showing you upward refraction of light. And it's showing you that really going out there with a theodolite and trying to tell us where the horizon is and whether or not it's dropped down, and because it's dropped, that's all means that it's a curved Earth. That's all just a fallacy. That's just affirming the consequence. So your height above the surface is what creates the horizon for you, right? Because if you're only 2 foot tall, your horizon is a different position to someone who is 6 foot tall, which is different to someone who's 30 feet above the surface, which is different to someone who's 1,000 feet above the surface. This creates a cone of vision, right? Because you experience the ground appearing to ramp up towards your eye level, 360 degrees around you. And this creates your perspective, which in relation to the horizon, all objects will appear like all objects close to you will appear low in your vision. And as they approach the horizon, they will appear to rise until they reach the farthest visual point, which is the horizon. And once it goes beyond the horizon and moves away, it will now do the exact opposite. And it will start to drop below. This is all just perspective. Now, if you're a 6 foot observer, you've got a cone of perspective there. And I just put many miles because, like I said, one day your horizon could be 1 mile away, and literally just hours later, your horizon could be 10 miles away, right? So we can't really say that from any observer height, that's the distance to the horizon. We can't just go arbitrarily, oh, well, it's 3 miles away. Like, that's just it's a ridiculous claim. You can't claim that unless you put something at 3 miles away and see exactly where the horizon is, but then go back or just stick around there for an hour, and the chances are that the horizon will move, and that thing that 3 miles away now will no longer be on the horizon. You would have to move it again, either closer to you or further away from you. So if we go 50 feet up and our cone just gets bigger, we go 500 feet up and our cone gets bigger, but it's always going to be this cone of vision. No matter how high we go, we're always going to see the horizon ramping up, or appearing to be ramping up towards us, towards our observer height. We can say towards our eye line. Whether it hits our eye line or not is pretty irrelevant. I'd say the only way that it would ever perfectly hit your eye line at all times would be if there was zero refraction. Like if we just took all the air out of the surface, then we would perfectly see the horizon at our eye line all the time. So no matter how high we go, we're going to get this cone of vision. And as you move, your cone of perspective moves with you. So every time you move, you change the position of where your cone of perspective is, because it follows you. It's personal to you, right? It's not going to be the same for someone else unless they're literally mimicking you and in the same position as you, and they are the same height as you, right? Their horizon would be different than yours. Now, as a visual example of this, on the 17th, we had an inferior mirage again. Now, that bottom image, I know that that rock wall there, the base of that rock wall, the very far left-hand point, is 3.6 miles away. And so we've got the horizon pretty much right on it. And then when we're looking back either direction, have I got this blown up or something? No, it can't be. So when we're looking back either direction, we can see there that I've now moved position. So I've moved to Brighton Jetty. Oh, hold it, this one here, sorry. I'll move to that Glenelg Jetty position, which is 5 miles away. And the position of the horizon has moved with me. I moved to Brighton Jetty, and now the position of the horizon moves again. And then I moved to Kingston Park. Sorry, this is looking from Brighton. No, this is looking from Glenelg to Brighton, or Brighton to Glenelg, sorry. I've got this in another visual, so sorry if I'm confusing anyone. And now this one's looking from Brighton towards Kingston Park. And this is what we were looking at. So we have the rock wall that I first showed you right on the very far side. I was on Grange Jetty looking from there. From Grange Jetty, I could see from the rock wall to the markers. I then moved to Glenelg Jetty. And from Glenelg Jetty, I could see to just before Henley Beach Jetty. And sorry, when I say jetty, I mean pier. That's what you guys call a pier. And then when I'm on Glenelg Jetty, I can see from basically Henley to just beyond Brighton. Then I move to Brighton and I can see just past Glenelg. And then I move to Kingston and I can see just past there. So my circle of vision moved with me as I moved position. Now, on the other day, when I had this more like 9 mile horizon or 9.5 mile horizon, right, from both observation points, when we can see that we have a completely different horizon from day to day, when I go back there on the second day, on that opposite day, I literally only have one cone of vision to get all of that in. So rather than me having to move basically 4 different places to be able to see all those different things, I'm in one spot and I can see the whole thing. So my cone of vision now is larger. But no matter what happens, I still have this ramping. But that visual ramp now just happens over a longer distance. So I will actually see the surface all the way until it hits the horizon. And now when something drops off, now it drops off at 9.5 miles rather than 3.5 miles. But it has nothing to do with a curve. It all has to do with perspective and how perspective works with the horizon. So this is how perspective and the horizon work together to give us the world we see. Right? So when we look here, we just have that same thing, that little rock wall. It's all filmed from the same spot, same observer height, just different days. And we'd see that top left, bottom right, we have much further vision on these days, probably even up to closer to 15 miles or so. Because this is quite often what happens to me is looking to my right, I normally don't see as far, but when I do, I see much further than what I do when I'm looking to my left. It's really weird. Don't ask me why that happens. It's obviously something to do with refraction and the way that the refractive effects are working. But we see how we get totally different visions of the same thing. So when people forever have said to us, look at these things in an inferior mirage, here's the globe, I just say, cool story. You have no idea what an inferior mirage is and how an inferior mirage affects what we see. We go here. Now we're looking I'm at Grange, I'm looking towards Brighton. And we're looking at the same thing. On the top right and bottom right, we're seeing all the way down to the shore. Top left, bottom left, we have an inferior mirage. So the bottom left, the mirage is probably closer to just before 5 miles away. And I can do this to show you how I know that. Because we can see that this point here, which is 5.5 miles away, is in an inferior mirage. And it's only just in front of that. So the horizon on this day is approximately 5 miles away. I don't have the poles in there, so we can't see the other poles. But when we look on this day here, these are deep into an inferior mirage, and all of this is gone. And I can't see the buoy at this point. But yeah, and then so on this day here, we can see there's those little rocks. And we're seeing all the way down to the shore over here, seeing seaweed right down at the base of the water. And I've had a mirror flash from the sand further, just over here, a little bit further away. And that was right on the sand. You can only get a mirror flash from the sand on a perfectly flat ocean day, or as perfectly flat as the ocean can be, I should say. It's obviously not perfectly flat. Right? As we established, nothing is perfectly flat. But so here we see the horizon is in different positions on different days. And we can go to the next one. Now here we're talking the area that's more like 12 and a half miles away. Excuse me. I'll just escape from there because this one here, right? We can see this area all the way down here, little concrete area here. I've had someone with a mirror at 3 feet here, and I was over at the beach with a 5-foot camera, and we had a mirror flash from a 3-foot high mirror to a 5-foot high camera. And on this particular image, I'm at 20 feet. And we'll see the difference of, this is the same boat here. So we see this boat here, it's obviously closer. And then it goes back, it's a little bit further away. And now it's even further away. Now it's getting right down close to the shore over there. So it's now closer to this buoy, so it's closer to that 3.5 to 4 miles. Who knows there? Maybe it's like 7 or 8. Now it's more like 10 or so. But we go to a day like this. Actually, let me do this one because now we can see the buoy there. It's on the same day. Or not same day. So we see this buoy here. And we see this. This is a catamaran coming past. That buoy's in the same position as what it was before, but now we don't see the catamaran. We don't see any of the catamaran. What happened? Did it disappear behind the curve? Is that where it went? Like, it's a ridiculous argument to say that, when this down here is how I see most of the time. This is the predominance. Actually, inferior mirage is the predominance. When I don't have an inferior mirage, this is the predominance of how I see. And this is 12.5 miles. Just skip through these now. Okay, so here's where we go into just a quick explanation on how technically you personally yourself are the dividing line of perspective as well, because everything below your feet appears to go up and everything above your head, everything above your eye line appears to go down. Everything from below your eye line will appear to go up. So as you're looking out and things come from the horizon, everything above you will appear to go up until it reaches you, where you are personally dividing that line of perspective, and then everything will start to do the exact opposite. Now, for those who are on the plane, this is how they see. And then Travis kind of pointed out to me, so I put this in, that we don't actually really ever see this hard line. So this is kind of more what we see, this phased out, hazed out horizon. So we can never really tell how far that is. But if you just imagine now, this is kind of like perspective working in action. This now becomes technically our horizon right here. But if we were to go back, if we were to take away all the haze, we would see a horizon further away. But when we put all the haze there, that obscures the horizon and brings it closer to us. And when it's going to bring it closer to us, it's going to appear lower. And I'll explain that in a very, very shortly. Now, this is where I started to put these things together, because I started kind of messing around with people, and I would show them that image on the left. Well, first of all, actually, I would show a classic image of a big sailing ship that has been shared by many people along the globe side, and it being half hidden by the horizon, and then everyone going, well, where's the bottom of the ship? Stupid flirt, right? And so what I would do is I would show that ship first, and I'd be like, "Where's the bottom of the ship?" And they'd be like, "Oh, it's over the curve of the Earth, you idiot." Of course it is. And then I would show this picture on the left, and I'd be like, "Okay, there's a jetty down there. There's a nice horizon there. Where's the jetty?" And then I would quite often, not all the time, because some people would be thinking I'm baiting them, so they wouldn't say anything. But quite often they'd be like, "Well, obviously it's below the curve of the Earth, you idiot," because they see a horizon. So when you see a horizon, your only brain, the only thing you can think of is you see a horizon. That's the curvature of the Earth. That's where the Earth starts to curve. And the moment they would say that, I would then show the image on the right and say, "Well, where'd the curve go?" Because that's how I see it all the time.
Quick question about this image. How do we know that they are at the same exact height?
Well, unless you're calling me a liar, but I'll point out why and how we know that they're at the same height. Because for starters, I've got the dates here, the 19th of September and the 30th of September. I could literally go in and show you the videos. So that's not an issue. But I don't have that hooked up to my laptop. My laptop's only got 3 ports. I would have to undo my laptop and then do that. But if anyone wants the actual footage of this, I'm happy to supply it. You want the raw images or like the raw footage? No drama at all. And if you also look at the sheer fact that and also I'm on a jetty. Looking here, I'm on a jetty. I cannot see this like this unless I'm at the end of the jetty. And see how we see the little buoy here in relation to this. So with the way we see the perspective of all of these, of how these are, like buoy, pole, jetty, buoy, pole, jetty. And now see how there's a slightly more gap. So I was probably about a couple of feet to the left when I took this image compared to this image. But you can see how these are perfectly in line here, and then these are in line here. And the only place I can see this is to be on a jetty. There is no other way for me to see it. If I was closer to the base of the jetty, then this would look totally different. Like I wouldn't be able to see it like this. And I mean, if you want me to share that with you later, I can share that with you later. But let's just say that I'm not lying to you, and these are from the exact same position because they are. But I'm happy to share that, and I'm in the process of starting to put a bunch of videos together, and I'll be starting to post them on my channel, and I'll make this one of the videos that I post onto my channel to show that these two are done from the jetty, because every time I film, as I zoom back out, I then pan across and show where I am. So it's very easy for me to prove that these are taken from the same spot, because this is where I take them all. I take all my pictures from the exact same spot. And I can show you about 105 different days of this, all taken from the exact same position. So
Hey, pardon.
here we have.
Is this a formal?
Sorry.
Okay, sorry. I was just wondering, is this a formal presentation? I'm sorry, brother. I don't mean to interrupt.
No, it's all good, man. Yeah, it is.
Okay, forgive me. Yo, check it out. Well, I don't know if you'd be interested, but at 2:55, I have this phenomena captured in a video I put in the chat. I don't know if you'd be interested, but it's exactly what you're referring to. But yeah, cool. Sorry.
Oh, nice. I'll have to check it out later because I can't.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Cool, man. Awesome. I'll can't wait to look at it later. Excuse me again. Okay, so here we have that image, and you can see, apart from the haze in the distance, it's a pretty nice, clear, crisp horizon. Apart from the haze, of course, the image looks pretty clear. Now, this is what we're actually getting. We have perspective going up to that horizon, and then we have perspective dropping back down. I've shown this. I've literally just proven that this is what happens through the other boat observations that I showed you. And on this day, now we see all the way to the jetty. So notice how what's happening is, see where the buoy is and how the buoy is pretty much right on the horizon and it's up nice and high. But now when we go like this, see how the buoy drops? It's not actually dropping and raising. It's just how perspective works. That when you see further, so let's just say as it is, that buoy is on the 3.5 mile mark. And that line that we have there is the 3.5 mile line. Well, the horizon is the furthest position that you can see the surface. It is the highest visual position you will see. So when the horizon moves, right? So let's just imagine, I'll just jump out of here for a second. So let's imagine we had something here, right? And that's representing, in a way, the buoy dropping down. If something's at this level here, right, compared to this horizon here, is the equivalence now to the buoy being here. So you see how the buoy drops? Let's just say that's the 3.5 mile mark. It raises, but now the 3.5 mile mark is way in front of the horizon. So our perspective needs to go all the way to wherever the horizon is, because that's the furthest visual point we can see the surface. So now our perspective doesn't finish here. When it finishes here, that creates a horizon. And when we have a horizon, everything that is on the horizon will appear to be in the visual highest position that we can see. We know that it's all visual, and this is a classic example proving to you that it's all just visual. Because now when the horizon moves further away, everything in front of that now has to change. It can't stay the same, because the buoy can't stay the same, because if we look here, right, we see the buoy, and can you guys see that? All right, let me just blow it up a little bit. So we see that the buoy is at this level up here, right? So when I skip here now the buoy is all the way down here. But a second ago, it was all the way up here. It didn't just raise and fall. That's not the tide. The tide wasn't up here. What was this meant to be, sinking? That's what you guys would say. Well, not you guys, that's what we get. How many times do we get this from the Globers? Like, oh, someone better go save those people on the jetty and everyone over there on the shore. They must be drowning, right? That's the typical kind of dumb thing that we get said to us. So what's going on there? Is everyone over on that jetty drowning right now? Is the water above that jetty right now? Clearly it's not. And now all of a sudden, we get this drop. And it's all just got to do with perspective. When something, it's got to do with how perspective and the horizon work together. So this has to do with how perspective and the horizon work. This is a part that hasn't been described very well. This is something that we've been lacking. We haven't described this properly. Here we see the buoy higher. Now it dropped. It didn't drop. The horizon moved, which means our entire perspective of the whole scene has to change. Okay, is everyone up with that? I mean, I think that's pretty self-evident. So we go to a different observation. We see the buoy right on the horizon again. And now we can go to here. I'll get out of this. And this is that same day, which is the 19th of September. And we see over there on the top right, that area there, those houses are at 16.7 miles away. The base of those houses is at 114 feet above sea level, right? We've got the jetty, as I've shown, and we have this position at the bottom here, which is that area that was 12.5 miles away. This is the same day, about 40 minutes later. And see how we're losing a little bit more of that house now in the inferior mirage is building? Well, now we can see it. Now here we have an inferior mirage building on this day. And what we have is a high tide. We have an inferior mirage and we have some waves. And that's why we're getting it so high. See how it's creating this nice, crisp, clear horizon? We can really see a nice, crisp, clear horizon there on the right, apart from the haze. Well, when we see a crisp, clear horizon, isn't that when we're going, that's the globe? Well, that's 17 miles away. And the globe says that there should only be, including standard refraction, 66 feet hidden. But currently at this moment here, we have closer to 100 feet hidden. Right, but the difference between there and the one on the left, which is at 8 miles, we have 20 feet hidden, right? And the one in the bottom center, we have probably about 40 feet hidden, right? None of these match the globe. Not one of them matches the globe anywhere near.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Could you tell us your observer height, please?
20 feet. I'm on a jetty, and it will obviously change slightly, between high tide and low tide, it would change slightly. Right, so now we have, from this same observation, we have a little sailing boat there. This is on the same day, and it's there just behind the horizon, right? We see where that buoy is there, and we see those big chimneys at the top there. We see that the boat there right on the horizon. We see that house there, and now when we skip to a different day, I just kind of like position the ones at the top around about the same position as where they would be on the bottom, right? And position-wise, as far as I didn't have that little middle part there because this is from a video, so it's as I'm panning across at two different points of the video, as you can tell, which is why the boat is on the horizon on one and just behind the horizon on the other. But when we look at the bottom image, we see that same buoy and we see that boat well beyond the horizon. Okay, we see where, let me escape here so I can show you. So we see this point here, we see this house here, and where the horizon is coming all the way up here. And now we look at this same house here, which is this one here, and the horizon is all the way down here, and we can see the shore over here. This is the shoreline. There's a concrete structure right here that goes right to the shore. Okay, and this is again where I said I've got a mirror flash from a 3-foot observer height, 3-foot mirror to a 5-foot camera. And that's 12.5 miles. Here, I can blow that up a little bit more. You can actually even tell that the horizon is slightly above the bow of that boat, or slightly above the hull of that boat, right? Behind there. But on this day, the horizon's right at that buoy. Right on the buoy, right there. All this is missing. All of this is called distance, and this is perspective.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So if what we're looking at is apparent, that's not what's actually happening, though, right? So where we see the horizon, if it's apparent due to perspective, due to flat Earth perspective, that's not actually what's happening. So how do we know what's actually happening?
Well, it's refraction. I mean, obviously it's refraction, right? So that's what I was saying before. Well, the horizon is caused by our height above the surface. That's why we have a horizon in the first place. And then it's refraction that will tell us the distance to the horizon. So clearly on the image at the top, whatever's going on with the refraction there on that day has brought the horizon much closer to me. These are taken from the same observer height, the same position. I always go to the end of the jetty at the same spot, and sometimes I have fishermen that would be at my spot and I go, hey guys, do you mind if I just pinch this little position from you? 99.99% of the time, they're totally cool and they go, yeah, no worries, man. And they just jump out of my way. So I can get this from the same spot all the time. There may be a slight difference of like one camera might be, 2 or 3 feet to the left versus 2 or 3 feet to the right on a different day. But when I take photos, I always take my photos from the same place.
So, question: how are you determining the amount of refraction day to day, and what should be seen? What should we be seeing on certain days when the refraction is very low?
Well, obviously, I don't really think that there's any such thing as high. I mean, I guess there is higher and lower refraction, but no matter what, we're seeing refraction all the time. There is just a point where refraction goes from giving us an inferior mirage to giving us more superior mirage, and everything happens in between that. So there's this teeter-totter between the entire day so the other day I actually filmed one where I went from an inferior mirage all the way to a superior mirage over a 4-hour period.
Right. So, okay, next question, right? So, would you agree that on days when you see heavy inferior mirage versus days with low inferior mirage, that you would agree that on the days where you don't see much mirage, that's a lower refractive day, right?
Not necessarily. It's just different refraction. I wouldn't say it's lower refraction. I'd just say it's different.
Okay.
Yeah, well, because I mean, all it is it's just determining on how far, or we can say far, the light's traveling. If you don't like that language, I don't know. Some people don't like that kind of language. But I would say that the horizon, like the light is traveling obviously from the image to us. And on days that we see further, the light's just traveling straighter further. Now they want to tell us that the light's traveling over a hump, right? Now we do have someone, and I don't know if they're in the Discord right now, and I can't show their observation because it's not my observation, but we've been told that a superior mirage will give us downward refracting light. Well, they have direct evidence of shining a laser through an inferior mirage, and you watch the light go up. You watch it refracting up, not refracting down, it's refracting up. So that's the complete opposite of what we're told is meant to be happening. So when people say, and like all lasers that we've ever seen, anyone ever shine a laser, they all appear to be refracting upwards. All of them. There's none that we can see. I know I'm talking terrestrially over large distance. I'm not talking in fish tanks and someone getting a iron and putting an iron next to a laser and we watch it bend to the left and right, up and down. I'm talking over long distance across water or across land, not just some
Yeah,
short distance.
it appears to go up because the light is bending down. That's why it looks like that.
It appears to go up because the light's bending down.
Yes.
Okay, cool story. Sorry, man, I don't mean to be rude, but yeah, cool story. All right, let's move on. Okay, so here we have that same day, and you can see there I've put a line across that boat in the far distance because the horizon was still actually just behind that boat. So this is the difference between that observation and where we see the difference in where the horizon is and how we see that boat, right? The boat on the right is obviously going to look much larger than the boat on the left, even though it's starting to cross the horizon because it's way closer. It's really only about 4 miles away, where the boat on the left at top is, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 miles away. It's much further distance, so clearly it's going to be smaller. Now, here we go into how the distance to the horizon will affect whether or not we see it at our eye level, above our eye level, or below our eye level, right? So when we look at a perspective grid, when you bring the perspective grid closer to you, let's say we cut off, let's say each one of these is, let's just say for argument's sake, each one of these is a mile, and our horizon is 14 miles away. If we all of a sudden bring our horizon to 7 miles away, now everything at 7 miles will be the highest visual position. But see how it's dropped lower? This is the kind of thing we get on inferior mirages. This is what happens on inferior mirage days, right? And then with each one, if the horizon was to somehow, in some weird way, get all the way to your feet, you would have the horizon directly below you. Now, obviously, that could never happen. You would never have refraction that insane. I guess unless maybe you've got an intense fog, maybe that would be the only way. And then you would just have fog in front of you and you could only see your feet. But that would be the only way that kind of thing could happen. Maybe if you saw a huge fog rolling in, you would see the horizon just move closer and closer, and it would get lower and lower and lower and lower until it got right to you. The only way that could happen would be with some crazy fog. So when we look here and we have these two different positions here, right? What we're actually seeing is this. So here she's seeing further, and then here she's seeing less. So she's actually going to be dropping her gaze on each one of these. Her gaze is going to slightly higher. Her gaze is going to be slightly lower. She's not really going to be able to tell that because you're not really going to be able to tell that that's actually happened. Now, if she's on a hill, a cliff of some sort, she's still going to be looking straight across, right? But we know that, let's just say her eye level is 300 feet above the surface right now. Technically, that horizon that she's looking at in the distance is actually 300 feet below her. So there's no way that it can actually perfectly really get to your perfect eye level because it's actually 300 feet below you. So if you go out there with a theodolite and the horizon is slightly underneath where you should be seeing it at your eye level, of course it's going to be slightly below you because it actually is below you. It's 300 feet below you in that instance of what I just described. So to say that it perfectly rises to our eye level, it doesn't perfectly rise to our eye level. That's why I prefer to say that the horizon rises with the observer rather than it rising to eye level. Now, again, this is where I show how that even from a 330 meter observation height, we get inferior mirages, showing that we have upward refracting light. Now, here we have two observers looking at each other. They're both seeing perspective. That's what they're seeing. They're both seeing that grid in the middle. She's looking straight ahead at him, and she's seeing that grid in the middle, and he's looking towards her, and he's seeing that grid in the middle. They're both just seeing perspective. Now here we have two different observations of that thing that I said when earlier there was 8.5 miles away, but now from my jetty where I'm looking, this is about half a mile away, right? Now we see how we have two different observations here. Now, what is this? Here we have some kind of gap here between those two different observations. On one observation, we have that area that's up high, and on the other observation, we have it down low. Like, why is that like that? Why do we have this? That's distance, right? This horizon, the one that is lower, is 3.6 miles away. Now, for proof of this, or how I would know this, I'm going to make videos on this where I can show you that on the 1st of March, panning over that rock wall that I said is 3.6 miles away, rock wall that we observed earlier, that's at 3.6 miles away. The horizon was right at that rock wall on that day, right? So I know that it's 3.6 miles away. And that is an inferior mirage. On this day, we have an inferior mirage. An inferior mirage will always drop the horizon. And on this day, we see the difference between these two, right? See the difference in height. That horizon is from 25 miles there, because this is the land in the distance, to 30 miles away. So we have that and we have that. Our perspective must change because now we have a horizon that's further away from us. So our entire perspective of that entire image has to change. It can't stay the same because now the horizon, as I've described to everyone, is the furthest visual point you can see the surface. You can't see the surface of the ground beyond the horizon. Here, the furthest visual point is 3.6 miles away. Here, the furthest visual point is around 25 to 30 miles away, probably 27 miles in the middle there. So you can't see beyond that. So this is again what we're seeing. Now we get to this. Something that Zanuck sent to me a long time ago and was asking, what happened? What's going on? Now, this is also an inferior mirage on the left. Again, something nobody picked. Because I don't know why it is, but people who are on the globe side are not very good at picking inferior mirages. And we see this little doubling up here. Is this doubling up here? Right? This is bottom part here is a mirage of this top part. Now where it gets really hard to pick mirages is when you have straight lines. When you have straight lines, they're really hard to pick. Okay? This is why on Earth is Life's videos, he keeps claiming there's no mirages, which I'm going to show him that there are inferior mirages on his days. They're really hard to pick because he's showing buildings. And all those buildings are just straight lines. And I've asked him to provide me with the actual raw footage so I can see it in a much clearer view rather than a compressed file, which he's not giving me. So I don't know why he's trying to hide that. If anyone wants to see the raw footage, we can open a Google file and I can send them to you. I don't have an issue with any of that. So here we have these 2 different days. What's going on? Why is the image in the back lower, or why is the oil rig in the back lower than the oil rig in the front? And then on the other day, it's higher than the oil rig in the front. Okay, so now here we have this point. So we have the horizon that goes to the first oil rig on the left. Everything from there must drop off. It's also an inferior mirage. And what do we know about an inferior mirage? An inferior mirage causes this upward refraction of the light and it will drop the image in the background. But the horizon is the dividing line of perspective anyway. So no matter what, wherever the horizon is, whether it's refracting, whether we have it in a mirage or no mirage, it doesn't matter. The horizon divides your perspective. And at that point where horizon is, everything from there will drop. Mirage or no mirage, that doesn't matter. On the image on the left, we have the horizon now further away. And as I showed you with the buoy before, we must then, everything must change. So whatever's in front must then go lower and everything at the back goes onto the horizon, because the horizon is the furthest visual point you can see, and everything on the horizon will be visually higher than everything in front of the horizon or behind the horizon. It's the same thing. So here we have the upward refracting light, and I think light is always refracting up. That's the only thing that we've ever seen is within lasers is light actually traveling up. We've never seen any lasers bending downwards. So if any glober out there wants to prove that light can bend down, get about 50 feet up, show us a laser bending down. If you can show that, then we can scrap this whole idea and we can then know that terrestrially the light is bending down and could be bending down around a curve. That could be possible then. But until someone shows that, we just have to go with all the evidence at the moment, and all the evidence is that when we point lasers out into the distance, all we ever see is upward refracting light. So on these different days, on this day, the light starts to bend on the first oil rig, and on the other day, the light isn't bending until beyond the oil rig. That's where the light is starting to deviate, and that's where our dividing line of perspective happens, which is the horizon. Now, this is kind of what's actually going on. We get that division, and that oil rig really is just sitting there like that, but it's here. And on this day, see how the oil rig at the front then has to drop? Remember how that buoy had to drop because the buoy was on the horizon, and now it's not on the horizon anymore, so it must now obey all the rules of perspective, and now it's closer than the other one, so it now has to appear in a lower position. We're going to go, I'm got a pretty deep one of this because this is something that still gets posted a lot on here. It gets posted all the time on here, right? And here's the answer for what's going on. Now, why didn't that, is that meant to play? Oh, no. Okay. So here we have the buoy again, right? And on the right image, I'm showing you where, and what I've done is I've actually reversed these images so that way they're the same way around as this. So that way the buoy itself is on the left and in the higher position, but in reality, it's on the right. I just like flip the images. So I'm not trying to scam anyone or do anything dodgy. I just flipped the images just so they matched. And what I'm doing here is I'm representing like the front buoy. The buoy at the front there is representing that oil rig that's at the front, and the jetty is representing the oil rig at the back. And we see the way that they change. Right? So we see that on different days, now we have this raising and lowering. So from here, as you skip through them, we keep the buoy in the same position. We see the way that everything in the background is just raising. We know that the inferior mirage drops the image. No inferior mirage, the horizon is now behind the back image. That back image now has to become the furthest visual point you can see. Right? So when that back image becomes the furthest visual point you can see, our perspective needs to change, as I've shown. So 3 different images with 3 different distant horizons. And we see the way that the buoy is dropping further and further in each one. and the jetty in the background is raising with each individual one on each different day. So when we have this, and on this day, we have this. So here, everything gets to the horizon and it will have to start to drop off. Now, the really interesting thing about these two observations, and let me know if you guys get what I'm saying here, but so imagine that we have someone there on this side, right? So let me blow this up a little bit. So we have someone over this side of the horizon, way over here. Like, I don't know, they're 5 miles away over there, whatever it is. And I'm 5 miles on this side. So let's say I'm to the left and they're to the right. Well, this is how I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it so that this is my horizon and this is beyond my horizon. But if we then just, hold it, let me go the other way. If we then looked from their side, so now imagine that's me all the way over there. I'm looking at this one on my horizon, and now I'd be looking at this one below my horizon. He's looking at it the other way around. Let me know if I'm confusing anyone. So he's looking at this. See how this one's lower than this one? On his side of the horizon, he's just looking at this. See how, imagine this now is the one that's closer to him, and this is the one that's further away from him. This is the one that's closer to him, and this is the one that's further away from him. In perspective, he's looking at these two perfectly in perspective. This one must be lower than this one because this one is on the horizon and this one is in front of his horizon. You guys following that?
Yep, you're good, bro. Excellent
Yep.
presentation.
Okay. Just want to know that everyone's kind of following that because that can get kind of confusing when I'm trying to explain that. But when we're looking at these two observations, we can just pretend like, you know, the one on the right, the guy on the right, all the way on the other side of that horizon is actually looking at that image on the left because his oil rig is low and the one on the horizon is high. That's just how it works. That's how perspective works. So here we just have a basic little animation to kind of show you what's going on. We have our two people on the jetty again, and just because you guys don't know it, but that one on the right there, that's who I called Super Sly. He's my good friend Sly Sparkane, who's always being a complete jerk off to me. So he got his own character. But he's there looking, and on this day, his horizon is right at the buoy. And he's looking there, and his horizon is right on the oil rig. But when he goes to, hold on, I'm too early, sorry. Now here we have these observations on what's happening when we see, don't see as far, see further. Don't see as far, we see further. Don't see as far, we see further. This is the equivalent of what's going on. We can see there on the bottom, 3.6 mile horizon, 9.4 mile horizon, right? It's all perspective. When we have a horizon that has all of a sudden moved further away from us, everything needs to change in front. It can't stay the same. That thing that's in front there, that oil rig that's in front, can't be on the horizon anymore if the horizon has moved to where the back oil rig is. It now needs to obey perspective and drop. It needs to be in a lower position. So here we have this, where we have a further distance that we can see, and we have less distance that we can see, right? So our horizon is appearing to rise. It's not actually rising, not physically. It's still just low. It's still like at that level, at our approximate eye level. It's coming up towards our eye level. It's rising with the observer at all times, or lowering with the observer at all times. Just when we have an inferior mirage, it is going to drop the horizon. It will make the horizon lower. When we don't have an inferior mirage, the horizon will appear higher. Now, okay, so I think this here is where I show this a little bit better with the animation now. So on this day, we see all the way across. That's the equivalent All these three things are the equivalent, right? We see that top image on the left. We see all the way to the shore. So we're seeing to a horizon. It's actually just beyond the jetty, but I've just made it in the animation to the jetty. And on the right top image, we see the further horizon. Oh, I should have got rid of that one. And now on this day, we see to the buoy. That's where our horizon now is. Everything beyond there we can see is dropping in perspective. That's why I've got that arrow representing. That's kind of her looking forward, seeing her perspective grid going up. And he's looking forward, seeing his perspective grid going up, and they're meeting at the horizon. And where the horizon is, it's dividing their perspective. It's dividing them in between each other. And that's what's going on with the top image of both sides. The oil rig is on the horizon. The oil rig behind the horizon is now dropping. Right? Now, let me exit here. And if I go like this, and now what I do, let me just do this. Okay. So we'll go back up here now. So now that I put that there, we can get an image of how everything that is in front of his horizon will have to be low, just as everything in front of her horizon will be lower. When it reaches the horizon, it gets higher. It's on the highest visual point you can see. You cannot see the surface beyond the horizon. That's not how it works, right? We have our perspective. Perspective and the horizon actually work together to give us the world we see. When we're looking in front of the horizon, we understand it. We just don't realize that, or didn't realize that that's actually what's going on behind the horizon as well, because the people on the opposite side of the horizon are seeing the same thing. Now, I know you've heard me say this many times over, but and I'm sure many of you are really starting to soak this in right now, but the more times I say it, the more it's going to get across. And now if she was to look from the opposite side, technically from the opposite side, that's how she's seeing it on the day that it's further. So even from her, she's looking that way, she would still be seeing that, provided that all conditions are equal. Let's just say that all conditions were equal. I've already discussed how that's not necessarily how it works, but let's say all conditions are equal. She would be seeing the buoy on the horizon, and on that day, she would be seeing the buoy low, and she'd be seeing that jetty in the distance up high on the horizon. And this is what he would be kind of looking at from front on, and then that's how he would be looking at it from front on. Now, this is just, I got to jump out of here. This is just some comparisons, and we're pretty much at the end of this now, so I'll just quickly show you a couple of comparisons. I don't want to do that. And from here, do that a little bit more. Okay. So as we go here and we drop this down doing a couple of blink tests, we will see the way everything raises, drops. Now, obviously, this is a slightly higher refractive day on this one here. Even though I said, what's higher, what's lower, we can see the way that this is, well, it's just a little bit more distorted on this day, right? We have an infrared mirage drops the image, and a non-infrared mirage will raise the image. Oh, I forgot to change this because I just changed all these just before. I should have moved this up. But see how on this day, this tower is 229 pixels, and on the day of the infrared mirage, it's 251 pixels. So here's your magnification. So when some people say, show us magnification, there you go. There's magnification. Now on the next image, so I don't have to go into that one and change that. I'm pretty sure I changed it on this one. So here we have another day. Okay, yep, there we go. So we got, and now you can see it's much clearer on this day. This one's 239 pixels to the top. This one's 265 pixels on this day. So magnification, no magnification, right? Infrared mirage, this is a much flatter day. This isn't a very wavy day. It's obviously it's a little bit of a ripple through there, We have the horizon here at the buoy or in front of the buoy, because you can tell that part of that buoy is actually in the mirage. And then when we skip through here, we have, these were all moved before, but I just moved this up. So now we have 34 pixels in between that buoy and the shore. Where on this day, we now have the mirage in front of the buoy. So that we don't see any shoreline down here, because now the inferior mirage is closer than 3.6 miles. So this horizon that we're seeing here is now closer than 3.6 miles. And this one here, I think, is yeah. So that's now seeing the shore at 14.5 miles away. We see all the way down to here. So this is going to skip. Okay, one more. Okay, that's enough. Let's go. Right, so here we see this little structured area down here. Oh, you son of a bitch. Sorry, guys. Do it there. So we see this little structure here. This is an area called Curfew Point. At most, this is 4 meters tall, 4 meters high. We can actually, well, I can see them. You guys probably won't, but there's light poles here. These light poles are at a point called O'Sullivan's Beach. There's a boat ramp there. These light poles go to about 48 feet high here. They're about 10 meters tall. 5 meters tall. This is about 5 meters high where this one starts. So this is about 10, no, sorry, they are 10 meters tall. So this goes to about 48 feet here. This point right here is 16.7 miles away where these houses are. That area right there is 50 feet. Right at this little nose point here is 50 feet. Standard refraction says that this point here should have the horizon up here. And that's already making the ball bigger. So the horizon should be up here. And that's already making the ball bigger. Yet here we're seeing all the way to the shore, 14.5 miles away. Now, I'm almost done, guys. Almost finished. Only a couple more to go. Okay, so here we have another day. And when people say, can an infrared mirage hide all of this? Yeah, it can. We get images of people that are showing us things like, is it New Orleans, across Lake Pontchartrain? And they're like, where's the bottom 28 stories? Where are they? Are you trying to say that over a 26-mile period, 200 feet can be hidden in an inferior mirage? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. It's not just hidden inside the little inferior mirage. It's hidden because the horizon has been moved way closer to you, and everything in the distance is also dropping, and the inferior mirage is then hiding things at a closer rate, from a further rate, or from a closer point. So everything is actually further from the horizon. So here's that little concrete area that I'm talking about, all the way down to the shoreline there. And then on this day here, we have basically 70 feet hidden. We've got 2 more of these and then we're done, guys. Right. So here we go again. On this day, we can still see a bit of the house, but underneath we've got the mirage happening. And as we take away the mirage, and what I'm doing is I'm keeping this point here. You can pick many arbitrary spots if you want to. I could just put the house at the same level at itself. I could put the horizon at the same level. I've just chosen this point up here. And we see this because we know that an inferior mirage drops the image. That we know. Even basic science tells you that. The inferior mirage drops the distant images. And then when we see further, perspectively, we now see all the way across. And now this point here is probably around that 3-mile water line. And this water down here is all the way around 12 miles away. That's why it's all hazed out. We can't really see it. But this water here is much clearer because it's much closer. And last one. I think this was actually the same day, just 2 hours apart. Oh, no, it's not. Sorry. This was to show an extreme day. So this is a crazy extreme day. 265 pixels down to 158 pixels. Now here we actually have a superior mirage in the water here. You can see how this is superior miraging a little bit through here. And what's going on here is there's a superior mirage of the water all the way along here, and that's lifting this whole image. Everything back there is now lifting. And as that lifts, it compresses the image even more. And this is what you were getting, Essie, in that video that you and Travis did that day. That was going on in part of that video. You were actually getting the superior mirage there, and the superior mirage was lifting some of that image, and then it compresses it. And then the waterline would actually be here, and then that's actually down here. So an area down here would actually be the waterline up here. And I think that's it. And now it's time. Well, that's a bit loud. Time to land the plane.
I have a question, but I'll
Awesome,
wait
bro.
for others to go in.
I just want to say I think this is one of the best prezzies I've seen on this. Way to go, bro. Impressed.
Awesome. Thank you very much.